to the Honorable MEC for Finance, Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism, Honorable Mlungisi Mvoko. To our MEC at DESREC, the favorite Honorable Nongeba Konsiwe. To our MEC Ntombovu Yonkopane. To the HODs in the room and the senior management within government. All of the HODs within government and senior management, the CEOs of public entities, the board of directors of public entities. If I can give a special greeting to representatives of business in the house and the captains of industry in the house. Everyone that is a business and social partner of government in creating the change that government wants to be. Ladies and gentlemen, a special Eastern Cape greeting to all of you this morning. Many of you would not know me, so let me introduce myself. My name is Ayanda Khamncwane. Dingumamngwevu Sikhomo Khudula. But more importantly, I'm an advocate for economic development of this province. I am a product of this province, born and bred in this province. I'm also an evangelist for special economic zones, a duty I've carried for the last 21 years in this province. And it is for all of those roles that I've been asked to steer our program today. It's a post-budget discussion. It's a deliberation and a thought leadership session with all of the important stakeholders in this province in terms of economic development and economic transformation. So that's my role today, and I would have hoped that you too would have given me a warm Eastern Cape welcome. Thank you very much. I don't think that the budget was somber, so I don't think that we should be somber today. And maybe just in terms of logistics, before we get started with our program, if I can request that everyone just puts their phones on silent, just to respect everyone that's on the podium. The bathrooms are at the back, straight ahead and at the back, if you need them. There are usherers at the back that can help you with any other requests that I have not touched on. The exit, in case of an emergency, we utilize the exit on the left, and we would gather on the grass on the outside so that we all know how to keep ourselves safe in case there is a crisis or an emergency. Before we get started with our program, I would just like to request that as part of meditation and prayer, we observe a moment of silence where everyone talks to their own higher power and ask for a productive and an excellent program for the day. If I can ask that we then have our moment of silence. Thank you very much. May all that you've asked for be. So, honorable guests, yesterday, as we all know, we gathered to listen to the budget speech that was delivered by our Honorable MEC of Finance in Bisho yesterday. And I think the one thing that stood out for me was that the MEC urged us to not just focus on the numbers in terms of the budget speech, but to also focus on the commitment by the Eastern Cape government, even during the most turbulent of times in the last 5 years, to change, to build the resilience and grow the economy of the Eastern Cape, all in order to build an impact, to create a positive change in the quality of lives of the people of the Eastern Cape. So as we reflect on the budget today, we're not going to be reflecting on the numbers, but we're going to be reflecting on how do we continue to create the change that we are wanting to see in our economy, and how do we, as the various stakeholders in this room, collaborate to create that change. And if you listen to what the MEC said, One of the things that he underlined was the important role that micro, small, medium enterprises, or MSMEs, as we call them, the important role that they play as the cornerstones of driving economic development in our province. And there were a number of initiatives that he unpacked. He spoke about policy reform. He spoke about creating enabling infrastructure. He spoke about funding and other related support that the Eastern Cape government was already implementing to support MSMEs. But today, we're not here just to reflect on that. Today, we are here to build on that foundation that he unpacked yesterday. Because that is just the start of what needs to be done. But today we are here to collaborate in thought and in ideas. We are here to be solutions-driven about what not only the role of government is, but the role of private sector in supporting MSMEs as the cornerstones of this economy. I think globally, the statistics are there, that particularly in emerging economies, MSMEs have a fundamental role to play, not only in creating jobs, not only in transforming the economy, but in driving innovation, in looking at new sectors, and in deepening the localization of existing sector value chains. And that is at the center of our discussion today. But before we get to that discussion, I would like to invite to the podium the head of department for Provincial Treasury, HOD Majeke, to come and officially welcome us and set the tone for that discussion. Over to you, HOD.
Program Director, Mamukhamwan, to Honorable MECs, which are here, MEC of Finance, Mr. Mvoko, MEC of DESREC, Sports and Recreation, it's Umamu Ukonziwe, Umamu Kobane, MEC of Public Works and Infrastructure, is to the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Finance, Mr. Ndaweni, to the heads of departments. I've seen a couple of them, just to mention a few. I see Mr. Daimane, Mama Madlamini, Mamu Gebe that side from health. CEOs, which I've seen, I won't mention all of them, but I've seen CEO of ECDC, Liquor Board, CEO of Tourism, AITC, I think, and others which I could have missed, to the business fraternity, which is here, see, of course, Mr. September and others which are here. I'm just highlighting a number of them, and including the banking sector, which I see in numbers. Standard Bank, ABSA is here. I'm not sure if FNB is here. Netbank is here. So I think they are more or less represented. To the academic, I see Mr. Kanti Pai is here and others who are part of it. But let me, and to everyone, Treasury and CFOs from different institutions, and any portfolio committee member which is around, and captains of the ship in all other areas, greetings. I should have just said all protocol observed, but since they say I'm welcoming yourself, so I tried to, I'm sure I haven't covered all of you into that space, so don't feel offended that I've not done that. I'm Daluhlanga Macheke, working at Treasury. Always say to MEC, if you fire me, I think my community wants me, so I'll be, you're giving me the proper reason why I need to go back to the community and serve the community. It's because now I won't have any kind of a formal job. At least the community, I know I'm kind of covered. So I'm just saying it. I always say, they say, no, Majek, I'm not going to give you what you want. So yeah, this yesterday, as a program director kind of indicated, we were presenting call it a tough budget. We always say each and every time that, we present a tough budget, and it doesn't make it easy every year. And I guess we got to realize that the issue of, we call it Maslow's hierarchy of needs and wants comes in, Sometimes we do have wants, sometimes we do have the needs into it. And we have to now measure which one do we want and which one do we need in terms of the process. And I think we had to kind of assess in terms of now which are critical in terms of service delivery imperatives. And of course, I think the cornerstone is in developing the economy. But we've got to realize that we need to develop the economy through others. You see, because I think that traditional approach sometimes of thinking then that you need to only provide through to the, call it economic sector, we realize that we seem not to be winning that much in that battle. So let us influence those, whether it is in the social sector, in order to create that kind of leverage. Why I'm saying that, which is some of the topical element, food security, typical example. We know then that it's important to develop true agriculture into it and create a proper value chain, which comes to, we call it the micro, small, medium enterprises, which goes there, and able now to know that the food basket is kind of produced within and have the rent circulating within the province. And we got to see that the province does have a niche in that kind of a space. So, and I think it's close to not less than 8 billion or so, which we could invest appropriately into that kind of a space. Not to leave alone that in the provincial space, out of the 76 billion, which we kind of budgeted, especially on goods and services, I will mention that. On that one, 46.8 billion does get to be spent within the province. And I think it does kind of a reflection. But now when you go to the detail, the issue is to say, sustainably, does it improve the livelihood in terms of the Eastern Cape? Especially developing the enterprises so that they become sustainable into it. But secondly, making the impact into the community in improving the quality of life in terms of, it's one fundamental thing. Which reminds me of some of Clem Santa, some of the element to say, in life, we are going to see some options and scenarios which we need to work through. And I think when we're working through the budget, it's one of the things which we said, which scenario do we take? And we got to realize that we need to take a scenario which is balanced into it, prudent financial management, but at the same time not compromising the service delivery into it. So this is why I was talking to say Maslow's hierarchy of needs and wants into it, to say which one becomes sustainable in those kind of options. But we think then from where we are, it could be an inside, outside looking into it, that that kind of an approach into may have been how we see it, but it could be different to how you see it, which speak to say that's the reason why today we've called all of you, so that you provide that level of input in what we are looking through. So you should know it's not just a normal engagement. We want to see, to get to hear from yourselves, did we really have a budget which does reflect to that? So on those kind of a note, let me welcome all of you. You are all welcome. So please engage constructively into it. And we are going to value all of your inputs as part of the process. And we think that everyone else has been kind of been invited. And the reason why you've been invited is because we think that it is worthwhile for you to be here and for you to provide the necessary input. So don't feel shy and look to the next person. We are looking for your view. So all the speakers, we welcome all of you which are here, and please feel free to engage in any kind of constructive level where we are. So on that note, we say welcome and to the positive engagement which will come through. Thank you.
I think if there's anything, MEC, as I'm about to call you to come up, the reality is that the government purse is not getting any bigger and the priorities are not getting any lesser. But also on the other side, the global economy is not getting less complex. If you look at some of the geopolitical issues and the impact that those are having on the shape and the form of all of our global economies, it is definitely something that impacts on our own economy as South Africa. And in response, many countries that we've relied on are now starting to even look at protectionist economic policies. The reality then is that foreign direct investment is no longer the ultimate response to our own growth in terms of our economy as a province and in terms of our own economy as a country. On the other side, the African market is growing. There are trade opportunities that come with some of the trade conventions, and everyone wants to produce for that African market. Opportunities are mass, but the reality is that if our micro, small, and medium enterprises are to compete in that space, there's a need for us to support them in being globally competitive, in being agile, and in being very responsive to what the market wants. And I think I'm therefore going to ask you, MEC, to give us just some thoughts on how you think we should shape the discussion around how do we assist then our own companies, our micro, small, and medium enterprises. How do we leapfrog them? How do we give them an advantage to be head and shoulders above the rest in accessing some of these opportunities? Over to you, MEC.
Greetings to the MECs present here, MEC Konsiwe and MEC Nkupana. MEC Konsiwe being called the favorite. I couldn't help but, yeah, whatever I said here, I can't repeat here. And to the chairperson of the portfolio committee, Honorable Ndabeni, and just know about the way to anaking, yabuhlungu inhliziyo yethu bakuze nje usihlalo apha ko awukhatshwa nangumntu. To the HODs present here today, I can see the two in the table, Mr. Macheke and Umama. The cabinet committee today, economic development, is sitting at 8:30. All HODs are supposed to be there. MEC abayi two abalapho melibaba. I'm going to create a cabinet committee of 8:30 in Zanigota, no more Kritwang Utet. When the Ringa 20 like Nandi Luko Yam, Nina Nassis and Nassis at so Talabani Kritwa 8. Missing Gupa, the new chopper. The CEOs, sorry, the chairpersons of the entities, I can see Mr. Kobinga from the liquor board. I don't know where the rest of the chairs are sitting. Unfortunately, I was not told. And all the CEOs of the entities, and the bonileke apa ukobinga uhleli nowakhe kwenzela baba angabhatyazi noma uthi yabona buke ndamphunqula apho uzawuthetha into engafuma ndimbeka apha ecam kwam. And the rest all government officials present, financial institution, I've noted, Nedbank, FNB, ABSA, Standard Bank here. Oh, okay, I didn't see Standard Bank. Yeah, good to see you again. Ungwena mntu unqabileyo apha ndingafuneka ndiyabona uba uhambe lapha kude kum kungathi uyasondela. Abanye basondele kum, ngowedwa lo uhamba phaa. So Standard Bank and thanks God for attending. The business chambers present here. And in case the MSME sector, ladies and gentlemen, and greetings to everyone in the house. Good morning, Program. From Director, it is with the greatest honor and privilege that I get to host and address you at this budget business breakfast. Yabona xa into uyifuna ne ikhona into ethi kum Mr. Wakaba funeka uyiphathe ngokwakho. Because today we are supposed to be listening to the people that we invited, talking to us about this sector and advising us. I don't know how many of you watched the program last night by JJ Taban about the SMME sector and the pitfalls of government in trying to revive that sector and fund it. I don't know how many watched it, and I could agree with 50% of what was said there that government is not doing when it comes to the sector. And into ke siyathanda uzimamela Mr. Pai singurhulumente. Sizibiza abantu sizimamele thina. We listen to ourselves as government speaking. And instead of listening to others speaking to us about the sector itself and what is it that we can do. What I could learn from the topic. I mean, there are times when you sit down and listen to the people speaking and say, yes, Don, it's high time that we sit down as government and listen. That's what I took out of the program last night, because I listened and I realized that, you know what, Migi, it's high time that we sit down and listen to what people are saying about us as government. Now, under the theme, capacitating micro, small, and medium enterprises to play a meaningful role in the Eastern Cape economy, the role of public and private sector. The main objective of this gathering is to create a conducive environment in the MSME, in the environment for the MSME to thrive. Yes, yesterday was a budget speech. Much said about it, but we'll hear more when the debates start in the legislature. I should maybe also apologize for organizing this session at a short notice. I'm sure going forward, the next MEC will do better than I do in terms of inviting you. The budget speech itself considered various government priorities and related programs with biasness in the Department of Education and Health. And many people, I know that's the first criticism we're going to get as Treasury, that our budget caters for the social sector. And the second one is that it doesn't put a lot of money in the economic transformation and job creation. And the third one is that there's a lot of funds going the way of, if I could put it, wage. This is a criticism that will always come every year. I always ask one party that raises that, how do I get rid of the people that are in government today? How do I do that? Treasury most yawo ngaphandle ko-HOD Mr. Wakaba ugqibile 10 years pa manje bano 20 years behleli pa kwa-treasury and abakazoya ndawo akho ndawo baya kuwe bonke ndiyayazi wonke umuntu abanye bafikela kubo yonke le minyaka nanga hleli phala amadoda amanye oJoe no yona pa nanga bonke bahleli phaya mina naqiniseka ngenceba wona ufike nini pa kodwa ndiyakurhanela uba nawe wenye ifurniture pa akuhanjwa. So Umam Fanda always complains, MEC Fanda, that MEC, hey, le rugby team yakho yaka-treasury naye izolo beyithethe loo nto leyo ndathi ke kuye mamfana khandichazele nje uba ndenze njani because nam la madoda ndifike lapha. There's nothing I can do until all of them retire. Ndabe nihamba namadoda asixhenxe ngelo xesha. Neleyidi elinye qha umama uThungatha. Ukhona umama uThungatha? Uyafika? Akafiki. Ndabe ndihamba naye qha namadoda asixhenxe ndambuza kumama Mfana uba ndithini. Wathi hayi mabayeka, ndithi hayi kaloku umuntu uyeka xa kufika ipension yakhe. Ixesha ke lezawufika ke nawo uba bayeke. Now, in the 95 billion that total allocation to departments and programs of government, about 70 billion is going to the departments of education and health, as these are the leading apex priorities of government. However, we spoke at length about government efforts that seek to recover and reconstruct the economy. Key to that was the support this government is providing to MSMEs. We reported that 56% of the province goods and service budget went to the Eastern Cape MSMEs in the last 5 years. Now, provincial department spent a total of 76.7 billion on goods and services, with 46.8 billion spent on the Eastern Cape-based suppliers. But if you look at the figures on how much is spent on MSMEs, of the 46.8 billion, 38.8 billion was spent on MSMEs. But let's look at the where does the Eastern Cape stand? With Eastern Cape-based MSMEs benefiting to the tune of 21.7 billion. Now you can see that we spent 38.8, but in that 38.8, 17.1 was not spent within the province. Billion was not spent in the province. Which was a point of discussion last night about how much we spend on MSMEs. Do we have a program, Mr. Wakabu just asked there, that takes an MSME to greater heights, if I could put it simply like that? Or we fund them to maintain them where they are, just like emerging farmers that emerge for 20 years. So emerging businesses now will emerge, Brian, for the next 20 years. That's the question. Are we intentional about funding them to get out of being small and medium, micro, small and medium? Or are we funding them to sustain them there? Maybe we're going to get advice and someone is going to tell us how we are performing of that. We highlighted in the budget speech that the government, financial institutions, development funding institutions, the private sector at large must collaborate to develop innovative financing models that cater to the needs of MSMEs. Prioritize infrastructure development in areas where MSMEs are located, and invest in education and training programs to equip the local workforce with relevant skills, non-payment by government. We spoke to the funding instruments that are there for the sector to participate, whether you talk with Qalo, LRED, Eastern Cape Development Fund, loan finance at ECTC, agri-blended finance at Dr. Da. You know that we allocated the 100 million to you, Miki, Waipasa, Wainika, Wagab. And Wagaba, I said, when Chilo was much, I don't know how it happened. Because normally in treasury, if you don't spend, you lose it. So they were clever enough to roll it over before they could lose it. Because they could only spend 81 million of the 100 million we gave them. And rolled over. They rolled over the rest. Now, I don't know how they did it because it became soft. Because under normal circumstances, an economic development fund should be spent, done. Of course, that's with your rollover. There's no reason for a rollover on an economic development fund. Now about all ABSA, now about all Nedbank, Standard Bank, FM, they're here. If you can't spend it, partner with them. Ask what the intention in for you to spend. But for some reason, by roll over. And strange enough, Treasury Joe Wafumindoba Makawangezele Ngobenga spending 30 more million rand, while they could not spend 100 million rand. Ndiyazi ke li ayizoba lidabeli lula elo mna mandiliyeke kule ndawo likuyo. The provincial government has for 24-25 financial year, okay. I did speak on that. I'm trying to paraphrase and not speak on all of these things. The MSME across the board continue to face difficulties. And the sector in South Africa and the Eastern Cape province faces numerous challenges such as lack of access to finance, inadequate infrastructure, and shortage of skilled labor as well as non-payment by government. Now, there are two things that I also understand. After the program last night, I sat there and, just thinking, lying in bed, thinking about this, Mickey. How do you procure? How do you, I don't know how you guys are performing there, but I think, you are paying them. Okay. How do you procure from an MSME? Uzifumane goods, uzisebenzise, ungayibhatali. And that is a question engakwaziyo nami uyiphendula. La mntu odayo, the guy that makes the order, we receive the goods, we use them, we can't pay. And then xa ubuza ke uzathi impendulo kaMajeke ndizanika la mpendulo lokunika ngayo impendulo athi hayi yabona ke MEC health no education they run out of cash. Seriously? How did you procure at first if you're going to run out of cash? Uqala njani uprocure? And then uthi you've run out of cash. This is the situation in health and education. I can't answer that question. And someone was proposing that ingati befuna ubanjwa, which the PFMA says that. I think someone needs to go to jail in kwezonke izinto uqala ba kulo mntu chief procurement officer whatever igama nembiza ngalo. Someone needs to go to jail. And it's not thousands, it's millions that they are not paying. Hayi ke kodwa amandingaphosisi i-officials ziyakwazi uniconvince into yoba hayi uphela imali enye into MEC kwezi documents zabo ziba khona into ezingacacanga funeka zibuyiselwe ziphinde zihambe ziphinde zibuyiselwe, and they give you all the reasons for non-payment, and we go past 6 months ayikhona umuntu ofuna uye etrongweni. Seriously, qha into yoba siyanzinyelwa thina singo-MEC identify who must go to jail because aba HOD bethu bathethelela aba bala department singaspendiwe. This is seriously a big challenge. It's criminal actually that MSMEs zingahlawulwa ngurhulumente that was supposed to support them. I'm just lifting that one in all the challenges that they are having. But there are quite a number. On the finance, access to finance, I listened to that debate last night, Mick, and I thought about us. Okay, but I listened to that debate. One recommendation, including the Minister of Small Business Development, is that I make me appeal on small business development. Appeal to SITA, SIFA, Ban, who create one big fund in the country that is going to fund MSMEs, because the funding of MSMEs does not depend on DDIT, does not depend only of small business development. Remember, it cuts across public works. In public works, we fund that he sets aside, he funds MSMEs, but where we are failing is having set-asides. And those set-asides with clear categorization that this is for MSMEs, this is for the youth, this is for the women. So why should we have a department that funds that? I agreed with that, and I think in the panel last night, they all agreed that when the minister said, Nati siyavuma, that there should be one fund some kind of a global fund. Should be one fund that would fund everyone, inclusive of DTIC, angabikho. You don't have NEF, you don't have all of them, which is true. Because the other one can fund you to buy a mine, and the other one funds you to buy chicken. But all of that should be put together in one fund. So that these guys from the Eastern Cape Business Council will direct their people to that fund. Yekuba uza kuthi sikunike form enkulu ezabangela bawuqale kuhambe uyojikela pha eBhayi izofika apha kuthi after 3 weeks ina 3 pages okanye ina 10 pages phansi kwayo attach business plan phansi kwayo attach zonke into ezifunwayo phaya financial statements phansi njalo okufaka ifike seyidocument engaka nalo muntu uyijongileyo akanomdla ojonga le document ingaka ujonga nje anything ezabangela ba ongakunikile fund ayikhangele msinyana athi awugqiba ayibuyisele kuwe. No, it happens throughout government. The old man was there used to make an example of a previous fund that when you got into the office you got a 2-pager, and that 2-pager you fill in that 2-pager. You know, you're going to buy a business plan, just attach it. But you've got a 2-pager. It tells you exactly what. Apa we have because zonke funds throughout national and provincial that you submit an application. But they still allow you to submit an application. Impendulo izawubuya ithi hayi imali iphelile sabona kwibudget elandelayo. Why did they allow you? And nalendo yoba basebenza stesa. I think those are the challenges that were raised last night. And I really said to myself, emveni kumamela program, government must sit down and listen. We've come a long way now, 30 years. Sesiyilantanga i-government wethu ulingana novuyiseka i-age yakhe ngo. Ngumboxela uhleli noba i-age yakhe il around i-age kahulumende. We can't still be formulating policies and plans on MSMEs. We should be doing something better. Sorry for taking too long, Program Director. So the objectives of these discussions are therefore to identify the challenges by MSMEs in the Eastern Cape Province, to propose solutions to overcome these challenges, enable thriving MSME sector, to outline the potential benefits of a thriving MSME sector for the province, and to suggest ways to measure the success of the proposed solutions. We must support our entrepreneurs, both established and aspiring, with an enabling ecosystem that encourages innovation and growth. This means streamlining bureaucratic processes, providing access to affordable capital, and fostering a culture of entrepreneurship that rewards risk-taking and celebrates activity. I was listening to Mr. September this morning when we were just chatting. For some people are born entrepreneurs. Abanye ke bazi entrepreneurs because of itenda kahulumende. So Mr. September was telling us that he knew he wanted to be an entrepreneur, irrespective of what his parents wanted him to be. Okay, he went to school because but he knew that he wanted to be an entrepreneur. He was a teacher, he worked in the bank and all of that, but ended up exactly where he wanted to be as an entrepreneur. And today, I just forget the stats he gave me the other day. He has a fleet of trucks, he employs so many people, he's comfortable because he does what he likes. So we've got to encourage entrepreneurship. This means streamlining bureaucratic processes, providing access to affordable capital, and fostering a culture of entrepreneurship that rewards risk-taking and celebrates creativity. It's through the involvement of everyone that is here today that we can still instill that culture and subsequently do away with systems that delay economic progress. So we're looking forward to, I can see there are sofas here to some robust engagements among stakeholders that will result in a adoption of a practical approach on solving issues that will be raised today. I know that sometimes when you platform kahulumeni ukhona beyibalisa pha buyifumena khaphu umbetha ayoxela. So i-selection yethu yabantu abazawuthetha, we looked at people that are going to make sure that they build us and they advise us. Okay, we can't deny the fact that out of the panel here, we're looking forward to an outcome that will actually help government to play a meaningful role in the growth of the MSMEs. Thank you very much, Program Director.
And I want to wait for him to settle before I tell him that he may not be the favorite, but he's my only lifeline and my only lifeblood. You may not be my favorite, MEC. I may not have called you that, but you are my lifeline. That's even more important than a favorite. You are my lifeblood. So, tatindawo yakho uzole, MEC. I think there are very important things that are coming from the MEC's address, and I think it lays a fundamental foundation for our discussion. And I think one of the things that we must note as we take the discussion forward is what is our role as government? Remember today we said we're looking at the role of private sector and the role of government. What is the role of government in putting their financial muscle behind MSMEs? You can create an enabling environment, but if you do not support MSMEs in creating a sustainable market, you are setting them up for failure. And that's an important one that we need to note. We talk about MSMEs, but the reality is that it's not one word, it's not one group, it's multiple groups. And there is some sort of progression that has to happen from you being a micro enterprise to you being a medium-sized enterprise. And I think the challenge that you are throwing at us, MEC, is how do we create that supporting structure for growth? Because there is no absence of ideas. There is no absence of entrepreneurs. There is, however, a lack in the supporting infrastructure within both private and public sector in ensuring that there is graduation from one end to the other. And I think it would be important that after this discussion today, we start to look at what is it that we do. The issue of expediency and a sense of urgency in driving the agenda for an inclusive economic participation is something else that I think we need to talk about. And lastly, I'd like us to talk about the debate of the structural challenges within government versus the capacity constraints within government to carry what is a growing SMME or MSME sector. Because then we need to say who else needs to partner with government in that. But it's not a discussion I'm going to have. So I'm going to invite some of our speakers today. I'd like to invite onto the podium Mr. Vukile Nkabinde from the Department of Small Business Development. If you can please come through and take a seat. I'd also like to invite Mr. Bantu Makashela from APSA to also join me on stage today. And drive this important thought-provoking discussion. And I'd also like to invite our economist, Mr. Kantipai, as well on stage as we give them a round of applause and we welcome them. Okay, we're missing the third one. Are you on your way, sir? Welcome, gentlemen. And it's really going to be an important discussion. And I think the challenge the MEC is throwing at us today is that there is potential in terms of this particular sector of the economy. There is potential everywhere. But the challenge is that there are constraints. And we then need to say, what is it that we do collaboratively as the various stakeholders to unlock the value and the power of MSMEs in anchoring and driving the economic development agenda of our province? I don't know the answers, but I'm told that you do. And I think that the discussion we're going to have with you is that we're wanting you to plant a seed and anchor what is going to be a solutions-driven discussion. It's not just focusing on the problem, but it's going to be a solutions-driven discussion on what is the change that we can collectively create as the stakeholders around this room to better enable SMMEs. Mr. Vukile Nkabinde, maybe let me start with you, because I think it's important for us to have a picture of what is the reform that government is driving in terms of policy and in terms of support to MSMEs. If you can please come join me to make your points to drive the discussion.
Good morning, Sister Ayanda, Program Director. Thank you so much for the enthusiasm and the energy that you are giving us this morning. To the MEC, Honorable MEC and MECs that are here, should I be allowed to say protocol observed? Because all the people really that are here are so important, like the Program Director said. Please find fraternal greetings on behalf of our Minister and the Executive of the Department of Small Business Development. You might be aware that this week, in partnership with GEW, there is the Global Entrepreneurship Congress that is taking place in Cape Town. Hence, our Minister, our DG, and our executives really said, my good self and my leader here, Mr. Mvoko, we shall be here to grace this occasion. My name is Vukile Nkabinde. I hope all of us are Vukile here, because if you are Lalile, it will be a challenge. Thank you so much. My dear colleagues, not also belaboring the history of the department, you will be aware indeed that in 2014, after 2012, where the National Development Plan was enacted really as a policy of government to drive the trajectory of economic development and job creation through small enterprises in essence. In 2014, this department was established. Our minister, current minister, as will be aware, as the MEC was referring even yesterday, comes from this very, I would say, holy province, because I was involved within the department, in my other life, with the informal business economy. We also launched that strategy here in 2014, I recall, in Port St. John's. Sister Mimi there, Dr. Cholingana, were really critical in that regard. With regards to the topic at hand, really, the purpose is to really just give a quick orientation briefly around what is our policy trajectory as the department and as a country, and as requested, to quickly look at what reforms are we currently having. So we're driven by what is called the National Integrated Small Enterprise Development Strategy. It is a challenge indeed when we are here. I think I should have brought my, laptop so that I see, because always turning and jiving is a mission, but you will allow me to. I won't go much on this slide, but it's very central, colleagues, to remember that since 1996, that's when the policy of small enterprise really was enacted, so that we'd say, what is it that is the vision of the country? In 2004, in particular, therefore, we were able to have the Small Enterprise Act. So in 1995, we then had the white paper, which is the policy that is driving us, which led to the Small Enterprise Act in 1996. In 2004, therefore, we also then have had what we call ISPESA, the first strategy really in the new democratic dispensation. It was also at that time, as you will see, some are highlighted in red, where the cooperatives policy was developed, and in 2005, the Cooperatives Act was also enacted. I referred to 2012 being that NDP time frame, but also the strategy for cooperatives development that time. In 2013, this NIBA strategy, the National Informal Business Upliftment Strategy, which I said was launched at Port St. Joint, also has taken place. Now, 2022, 2023, there was a revision, in fact, of the SMME strategy, which now led to this new space we find ourselves about what we call NISET, the National Integrated Small Enterprise Development Strategic Framework. It is also this one which you will hear on the reforms briefly, where we talk about the reforms, the bill. The MEC here referred about almost amalgamating or arrangements of coordination, especially with the agencies of SIDA and SIFA being one of the, now I'm driving mine only. Yeah, okay, when okay, so this NISED in essence, as highlighted just there in red, it's the strategy for the country as approved by cabinet. So all of us, in essence, is to say, how do we align and coordinate together to ensure that we are moving in the same direction. I will be moving very fast so that the minutes given really are productively done. But the previous strategy really, when it was reviewed, just on the bottom of the presentation there, it was found indeed that there is indeed lack of coordination, which we'll touch on it. There is a lot of duplication, the reference that was made earlier also here. You know, you find that, I remember it was in this very same hall, there was this one event that was having, the lady said, with one business plan, I was able to go to a district agency, go to a provincial department and this agency, go to a national department, and all funded me. And none of them were able to dictate that they funded me. So what almost a waste, but because creative and clever people were able really to deal with us. So in the development of this new instrument that we're having now, the policy instrument called NISET now, there was a lot during the evaluation of challenges that were raised, and then they were compactualized, which then led to the strategic approach, which I'll quickly touch now. That is, there are issues of information that are challenges there. How do we ensure that we are all aware of what is happening out there? What are the issues that are raised, for instance, by the SMMEs, MSMEs? Let me really appreciate this one. MSc and the province program director. This province is really progressive. You know, it is also scientific, I would say, that my leader talked of psychology of the Maslow, but really that if I'm small today, I'm micro today, the vision is that I might be small tomorrow and then medium the other time. So the SMMEs, it's like small today, micro tomorrow, and medium the other day. It's like giving. So this consistency of MSME internationally, and I could hear even on your narrative, on your articulation, that MSMEs is the way. And it's going to be Glonda. Secondly, from really the information challenges, there really were policy challenges that were there also identified. Reference also on the previous articulation, there is now going to cabinet the SMME and cooperatives funding policy, so that really we ensure how do we almost amalgamate these kinds of funding. You've got this, a number of these institutions fragmented. So and so is funding this, funding the very same thing, and we are not coordinated, not aligned at all. As we have said, creative people really deal with us. So there are a number of policies, market access and so on, that also got to be identified. Issues of service delivery, very key. And in the previous strategy also, the issue of this coordination, as mentioned, hence this mistrust and misalignment amongst ourselves as government, interdepartmentally, interspherically, intergovernmentally, as well as with the private sector and the ecosystem at large. So the impact now, as visualized by this very new strategic framework, is to really have more MSMEs productively contributing to GDP, with more people employed, and then contributing equitably, inclusive, and transform and growing economy. Its scientific approach, as I've said, it says, with information, with umkhabulo, you know, there was a very powerful leader called Chief Albert Lutuli. In one of the documents called Umkhabulo, he mentioned something that the ears of the leader rings the voices of those they lead, you know. So if you are just doing what is called governmentalism, APPs, for the sake of them and so on, and not really being responsive to what the ecosystem or those that you seek to attend to are saying, you'll just be doing for yourself so that you get either your performance bonus, maybe if it still exists. So issues of content. Content gives you right to speak, right to make policies that are informed by evidence, which is the next component of it, that with information you're able to develop policies that are so responsive to the agenda that is being articulated there. And the policy really, therefore, gives you that enabling platform for better services that are coordinated. I mean, really, if we've got, let's say, Iskalo Youth Fund, and then we've got also in the National Department a Youth Challenge Fund. At what stage are those things talking to each other? Because they're targeting young people. Is there a central database of all young people that are supported? It is a challenge that is there. That therefore this one is saying, let's have better services that are coordinated. And through strengthened partnerships, as we have said, government-to-government relations are critical. We can have this geography called South Africa, but we'll have a country called national, a country called province, a country called local, as an example. At a certain stage, we need to ensure that there is this delivery. Hence, the principles of this very strategy are talking, amongst others, which I'll quickly highlight, the integrated approach that has to be there. If we are not integrating, we shall be found wanting. There are sector master plans that are there. If you've got this small enterprise strategy, in essence, how does it cut across? Because, colleagues, let's remind each other, there is no company type that you can register at CIPC called MSME. You can't go to CIPC and say, I'm here to register an MSME. There's no type of companies. Either we are a PTY, we are a cooperative, we are a non-profit company, if you are choosing as such. So this is given on a schedule of the company, of the Small Enterprise Act to say you are this size and this size. So SMMEs or MSMEs cuts across all sectors. So all the sectors, if we are talking infrastructure, in education, infrastructure and construction, infrastructure, be it agriculture and so on, they cut across all of them. So it is a generic but very, very critical component. So in addressing this issue of fragmentation, the very same NISET is promoting the element of developing joint indicators so that we're able together, the advancement of us planning together, all of us, so that when we report in the national parliament to say this number of MSMEs have been supported, it's not just the country called national reporting on the number of those that are there, but the entire ecosystem is able to respond accordingly. So we are advancing the negative impact of the disorder and the confusion that the ecosystem is currently experiencing, the isolation of individualism that is taking place, so that we move to the alignment for improved impact, and all of us have those collective components. I must say, colleagues, there were provincial consultations in this current financial year as it is ending that took place. This very province of the Eastern Cape was highlighted green, that Eastern Cape province is already aligning itself also with this NISET. Again, halala glonda. As I come to a close, Chairperson, in no time, part of the request for us really to present here was to share what are the ongoing reforms that are there. Colleagues will be aware, but kindly be aware further that there is a National Small Enterprise Bill that is currently on the platform, and the select committee in Parliament. There are public hearings taking place as we speak. I'm highlighting just a few, especially there in red, amongst others, just for emphasis, that you will be aware that CEDA, CIFA, and the Cooperatives Development Bank Agency are being merged into a single entity, so that, again, we avoid this individual getting a business plan from CEDA and it can't be funded there at CIFA, as an example, and in another place so far, you know. So this coordination is key to ensure that there is this single component. It also, there are issues of challenges like the MEC related to how do you not pay this MSME that you have procured, you know, the late payments and so on. So there is an ombuds, and we hope this province really will not find itself now having to answer questions from this ombuds. So very, very central that we note that on the 15th of March, which is this very Friday, it is the last, is the closure of the public hearings. If there's any official input from this province as well to ensure that they want to contribute, and I take there is some contribution as well, because it's not just for SMMEs, all the institutions in the ecosystem, including the public sector, is welcome. So we look forward to that this province would have made inputs. There is this also bill in terms of the policy around the national business licensing. You'll be aware in 1991, pre the new dispensation, there is this body of work around the licensing by municipalities. These municipalities does this way, informal traders in this component, so that there is uniformity. So the bill has been gazetted on the 1st of March for the period of 30 days. Again, if there's input, because taxi permits, tavern permits, and all of this are also part of that interaction that the province also deals with some licensing. So that coordination, colleagues, and input, let us not say we did not know. Also, colleagues, according to the NISET, moving quickly, there is what we called the National Summit for Small Enterprises and Cooperatives, which is also one of the Pillar 4 of this very same strategy. Pillar 4 really talks about the partnership element. Hearing those voices, as we mentioned, that if whatever we program or develop is not being responsive in terms of the voices of those we seek to serve, will be self-serving. So this November, during the Global Entrepreneurship Week, there will be this summit. It happens every 2 years, and the provinces are also then expected, and some, including this very province, I think there is some good leadership taking place, MEC. I remember speaking to Tatu Cholingan in the Chris Hani, they were already doing their district one, so that through district, then it culminates to a provincial one, which will then feed to the national chapter of this summit. So we look forward to that. This province would have also then engaged with that. I wouldn't spend much. There was a declaration taken in the previous one, so that collectively we are saying we are declaring that we'll be partnering there. Also, colleagues, you know, it's strange somehow. There is this body of work called Cooperatives Development. I remember, well, I'm still very young. Maybe Mahlatin is my uncle, so his voice can sound like Nami Keslanyan. But we hear the Prudepront, KWV, and so on, a number of these corporations that were there previously. So now, during our time, our cooperatives are almost non-starters, if I can say the least. Why? You know? But when you look at it, we've got stockfields that are there, Imkalele, Tile, economic ones, which are natural cooperatives. And our money of, a lot of us belong to stockfield, we contribute monthly and so on. Of course, our standard banks and our colleagues, APSAs and so on, they know that they are the custodians of that money. How does it work for us, really? Where is the challenge really for us to say naturally? Maybe when we hear the word cooperative, we start waiting, government will support us. Yet the cooperative spirit is also natural to us as African people. You know, we're able really to work together. But when it comes to this economic element, there is a challenge. Hence, one of our policy areas is around the development of entrepreneurship strategy, which will also promote collective entrepreneurship as well. So that this entrepreneurship is not only taken as if it's this singular thing, me and me alone, but that collective approach. That family, you remember those family businesses. Certain racial groups would know also they are very powerful in the family business development, so that we're able to strengthen those. So cooperatives, colleagues, let us give that chance and give really the support and the energy really that it deserves, so that it's not just about funding. So we see scandals here where people are cooperatives and then after the funding they are fighting. I don't know what really is the problem. So there is this International Cooperatives Day. It happens annually. In fact, the United Nations for the next year of 2025, they've declared 2025 as the International Year of Cooperatives. So the first week of July, first Saturday of July is set to be a declared day for this. So this very year, we're also looking forward to be hosting this one. And the provinces really are being mobilized to work with us, work with the cooperatives organizations, so that really together we can promote this, but also especially the goods and products, because we ultimately want the quality products really that we can showcase from these cooperatives. And this is my last slide, Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Mr. Nkabinde. I think there's a lot that he has told us. It's not just about your policy reform, but he's also spoken to us about areas that we can get involved in terms of driving advocacy, particularly in our policies, in terms of ensuring that we are part of that ecosystem, and in terms of participating and learning from some of the forums that he's highlighted. I'd like you to note any questions or any inputs that you may have on his presentation. But allow me to then move on to request Mr. Bantu Magashela from APSA to build on what Mr. Nkabinde was talking about. From ecosystems to partnerships, if you can please tell us about strategic partnerships that we can build with private sector to ensure that we enable MSMEs.
Thank you, Program Director. And maybe it's only good that I do not only greet you in the name of the Lord, but rather observe the protocol in the house. Greeting to the MEC, MEC Mvoko, and the MECs present. Ndinganganihambi nonke mabhayi. Didn't bet ukuthi kanti ukho ndimqakathileyo ukuthi ndiye ndenza laa nto yangapha. So greetings to you all. Greetings to HOD, Mr. Majek. Ungowako uthi wena. So bulisana bucala. I would also love to extend a special greeting to the banks present here, and more so to the bank that I represent, to APSA. As I stand here, Program Director, I feel like I'm going to represent all the banks because the people I see, the colleagues I see that represent other banks, is the colleagues that in one way or the other we've worked together. What I'm going to share here is what they know very well. So if you are a business person and you happen to interact with any of them, or you are banking with any of them, just know for a fact that when you require the things I'm going to talk about, that APSA can solution for you. Those colleagues will send you directly to me. Yeah? They have that duty. We respect each other in that industry in that way. So without taking up much time, I think as I listened yesterday to the budget speech, I think if you start from page 16 to about page 23, the budget speech was talking directly to SMMEs. And there are specific industries, even before I go through the presentation shared there, that were covered there. And I think I will cover them in my presentation as well, Program Director. I'm sorry for deviating. I know people like working in pictures, but let me just work with what I have in front of me. There's an automotive industry that was covered there. It's a very critical industry for us as the community that I come from, the previously disadvantaged, or I would say the African community. I mean, we drive these cars in majority. But when it comes to the aftermarket of the automotive industry, the servicing thereof, xa uqajukelwe ivili, apho uyakhona uyolungisela ivili, ufika ungekho pha, ukhona nje ngosimali, but awukho kwela cala lizawulungisa ivili. You don't own. So it's strategic things like that we need to talk about. But I will cover that as I go through the presentation. The agri sector, much as ABSA will talk about the primary agri, but also the secondary agri is not something that we run away from. It's a very crucial part of what we can contribute. So if I were to focus on the slides shared, I think I will be able to talk and toggle between that. So not to stress Program Director about me having a laptop. What enterprise development then? So ABSA, there's your traditional banking. If you go to a branch, you go and meet the likes of, you go and meet, okay, sure. You go and meet the likes of Pumeza Jasi, who is a banker. She will take you through the traditional products that the bank will offer. But ABSA decided, no, maybe this is not the correct trajectory to go and solution for SMMEs. Let's rather have an enterprise development sector created to specifically focus on SMMEs and also to create, sometimes we co-create these solutions. So you can move, Program Director. So what then that department does, we look at supporting businesses that come from a zero revenue to a turnover of 50 million. We do that because we believe once you go above 50 million in terms of your turnover, at least now you are established. You can play with your own toys. So what do? We create from micro. We start to create the support. I think, Nozul, if I'm not mistaken, last year you had 500,000 budgeted just to train the micro enterprises on the non-financial support part, just to bring mentorships and all of that. We also, in doing that, we don't bring expertise from anywhere else. We draw the support from within. If it's in the Eastern Cape, we'll go and look for a service provider in the Eastern Cape to come and train the SMMEs on all these business aspects that are required for you to run a successful business. The access to funding, that's also covered there. How do you then get to tap into the funds that ABSA has, and how does ABSA then get to assist you when you don't have collateral? How do we then work with you there? I know a lot of people would say, no, we go to the banks, but if you don't have security, the bank will not support you. We've got a way. We've got a way. We tailor-make solutions to each business. Our bankers are trained as such that we don't only look at you with what you bring, but key to that, you have to give us tangible information to work with. As we want to assist any other SMME, there needs to be a good business plan that we can work from. There needs to be a good financial document. I'm not saying your business needs to be in a very strong financial position, but at least the financials should tell us a good story about your business. So that we circumvent this issue of security and everything. And once we see a good business in front of us, most people in the SMME space as they start, they are professionalized in that industry. I can make an example of pharmacists. If I'm a pharmacist qualified and I want to start my own practice, my own business, the bank considers the portion that says, at least you are an expert in the industry. You are qualified. You are able to understand the concepts that come with what you want to run. And therefore, we will not go and say, we doubt if you're going to be able. I want to velo suku ngumaqashele yorani farmers. Ngazi nje ipanado cough mixtures mazizinikwa generic. So the bank would not look favorably towards me running a pharmacy. But if you look at the 3 pillars that if you can move, Program Director, where we try to create a link with SMMEs and business, the non-financial support that I was talking about, we create the one-on-one coachings, the group coachings, and all of that. I think we wanted to try that with NAFCOC. We tried a couple of programs with NAFCOC to a point where we wanted to bring down to bring it down to the level of regions to say, if we were to empower SMMEs, let's rather go them to the regions where they are based so that we don't keep on having this huge audience. Break down the audiences so that we can offer these coaching courses, create networking opportunities closer to them, and also introduce them to the business tool solutions like your cash flow management, the website design, and online marketing. Those are the platforms we have within ABSA. When I was talking about the access to funding issue, we don't just open gates for you to access funding. There needs to be a pre-engagement in terms of how then we get you to those funds. Because if we don't prepare you right, for example, where we don't look at how is your business shaped, what are you specializing on, what can we best solution your business? Because we have to tailor make a solution and also not to overgear your business, that we give you money beyond your scope, that we kill your business even before it starts. I know it's always a good idea to have more money, thinking that if I've got more money, I can do more for my business. Sometimes having just enough money to run the program that you have, it's good enough for us. Then the post-lending assistance. I know we do rebates on the interest rate and everything. We can negotiate that. I don't want to make that an audience issue, but we do engage around interest rates. That's why we get our other partners to fund some of these businesses. Of course, it's a strategic thing that we say, okay, this one looks like it's got a potential to go and compete. The access to markets. We have strategic partners there where we've introduced more women into those platforms like the Lioness of Africa and all of that. We've got the ABSA Game Changers with ENCA. In those platforms, we take SMMEs, not everybody else who's made it in business. And strategically within, you already know about what we would do with the Kula guarantees and all of that. Those are some of the strategic things that we can do to assist businesses. So if we look at the general part, that I think we will be on par with my colleagues from the other banks, whether it be Takos, green or blue, it's where we talk products. Because for every business, if you look at the reason I'm going to talk products, I know it's a generic topic. Everybody knows that when you go to a bank, you can get an overdraft for working capital. But I just want to emphasize the part about term loans, because I've gotten into serious fights about people wanting a particular term and not necessarily linked to their contract. If you've got a contract with Mercedes-Benz and we are funding you based on that contract, If it's a 3-year contract, we can't give you a loan on a 5-year term whilst you've got a 3-year term contract. So we align funding to the term of the contract. So I thought, let me just share that so that so my colleague before me here was talking about co-ops and all. And you will see in my slides, if they are forming part of the exclusions of who we can finance. That exclusion does not necessarily mean we cannot work with them. What it only means is that for those that are closer to the SMME development and the cooperatives would understand that if you are in a co-op and there's no operating entity of the co-op, because co-op can be of crop production and you produce as much. You can even supply your spa, you can supply whatever business. But if there's no operating entity that's registered as a business, the banks then become skeptical to say, but we can't do business with you because it's a community-based thing. Go and create an operating entity that then runs the business of the co-op. Then we can talk about how do we then fund the operating entity on the basis of what the co-op capacity has. I hope I'm making sense there. But anyway, there's more platforms that we create to engage, and we can talk about these things. So the Alternative Lending Solutions Program Director, if you can move. I said when I was talking up to the budget speech per se, the industries that were covered there is the industries that ABSA takes priority thereof. Inye emisi ongazuyibona ile film and industry. Ndiyabona ebhankini asikazifunda iziketch, asikazi understand. The day we get to understand how that industry operates, we will get to have people specializing in that. For example, in agri, we've got specialists that run with that. And film industry is a big industry, and I'm not done playing that. It's a very big industry, and it's starting to become big in the Eastern Cape. And I think with my colleagues there, it's something that we need to look at, because we can't leave it out. We can't let it die on its inception now, because it's growing again. So we've got agri, BEE finance. Specifically, it says for primary agri. The challenge that we get to have there, please pardon me, Program Director, the challenge that we get to have with assisting our primary agri clients is that they are mostly not commercialized. They go into communal lands, they get assisted by government, make no mistake, they produce good crop. You go to the areas like Yomkanduli, some areas of Chowkabe, you will find wool production wool production is at a height that has never been seen in this country. We produce some of the best wool in that side of the world. But unfortunately, those farmers are not commercialized. So it becomes difficult for banks to even assist those businesses. As a result, they are operating more like co-ops. Now you take your wool production to somebody else, you band it together, it goes to a BKB somewhere, then because BKB can be able to take it to better places for you. So there's a lot of money that gets lost in the way. So we need to strategically look into those. Even in the crop production, the farms are there. But they are not commercialized for us to be able to value the land, because before you finance a farmer, you need to know the value of the land that they're sitting on, because that's the security you have. The land, and then whatever that goes on top of the land or underneath, it becomes what we finance. But we need to have the basis to start from. So please assist our people to commercialize the farms in the rural areas. Umbono uphuma 24/7 ngapha emampondweni. Qale Port St John's uyoqhina 24/7 umbono omhlophe. Ungabe gqitha umbono omhlophe kwelizwe. Siyahoja apha eMthatha siwutye. And it's a huge requirement in the market. And in passing, I would say Kellogg's used to have a farm that supplied them Mvoko for years. So Kellogg's was drawing their maize from Mvoko for years, but processing it in the Western Cape. That has since stopped. I don't know who's operating that farm now. I was still at FNB there. So there are things that we can still do to transform the market. So the automotive industry, we are engaging with the province. Pity my colleagues who are leading that engagement. I'm not seeing them now, yeah? On the aftermarket that I was talking about earlier. We are engaging as to how we can best assist in that industry because it's a very critical one. We need to get SMMEs starting to do proper servicing of vehicles, establishing their own entities, Ulungisama and all of that. We need to fund that. We are ready to fund it. So I think, Program Director, let me not kill your time because there will be platform for engagements. I've said a mouthful. I think one thing that is important is that as ABSA, sithi abakhokeleyo napanga phakathi kukakhokheleyo uyayazi umama uzithutha that we don't get defeated all the time on some of the businesses that are really meaningful and we want to achieve something for SMMEs. We fight for those. We are busy revolutionizing that entity. Hence, I'm saying, as we are busy doing that revolution at ABSA, from the head office down, if you are banking with the other colleagues, please ask them to allow you to come and taste the kind of service you will get at ABSA. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Let us thank Mr. Mark Gashela for his presentation. I definitely think that there is synergies in what was presented as challenges that are impacting on the growth of MSMEs, what government is doing, and what private sector is bringing as solutions. But I think there is also a very serious call in terms of the areas of collaboration and how we must remove some of the superficial barriers that are impacting on MSMEs being able to access some of those resources. Our last speaker for the day is Mr. Kanti Pai, and he's going to be focusing on how do we then take those MSMEs that have been given the enabling environment, that have been given the funding, and ensure that we give them the markets through them being able to access some of the economic value chains. A round of applause for Mr. Pai.
Program Director, please allow me to stand on your protocol. Good morning, leaders and colleagues. Zawuzama ukukhawuleza ngoba noko kanboleke. Noko mna ndiyakwazi uzicofela. One of the first things I want to mention is that for a long time we've always thought about this idea that the economy is going to grow, and when it grows, it's going to create jobs. We are finding out that's no longer the case. That actually, the more we grow, the less of the jobs that you are creating. So we have to be particularly focused on the issue of employment. And this is what we are seeing, that actually for every unit of growth we see less jobs, about 90% of that coming through. And that's the important part about whether or not we're actually going to defeat unemployment. One of our clients, I work now for a company called PwC, one of our clients tells us that they are a brick manufacturer, that a brick does not hit a hand of a human being until it's at the construction site in some of their plants. So that whole value chain from the digging into actually making the brick, into packing it, into putting it into a truck is no longer in the hands of people. But the bricks are still being made. So actually the economy is growing. So we're still producing bricks. It's just now they just don't hit the hands of a person. And that tells us we need to work a little bit harder. And we're also seeing that the number of unemployed people are now the people who are actually new into the work environment. So we need to do something about supporting those. But the informal sector, and I want to be asked to be clear about what we mean by the informal sector in this context, is doing much better in terms of creating jobs much quicker than actually the formal sector, as you can see in that slide, where actually wherever we hit, potholes in job creation, the informal sector starts quicker. And so there's an important focus that we have to actually do that. This is for the national and this is for the Eastern Cape, which is actually surprisingly a lot more. Now, when we talk about the informal sector, we're talking about the SMMEs, that those are the companies that are, or the individual workers. So if you're an own account worker or you're a business that does not actually pay tax, those businesses are very, very, very important. And the way we think about it is to see the actual recovery that we've seen. Now, it's important to say right at the outset that this distinction between the formal sector and the informal sector is somewhat spurious. Because if you think about umntu owenza amagwinya mhlambe erengini, we know that that person is in the informal sector, but it's all ingredients zabo, they buy them from the formal sector. So umntu yakwa macro ayothenga zona. If uthengisa i-airtime, Vodacom. Vodacom is very much a formal business. And so what is very, very important is to first understand that link and how these businesses that are in the formal sector and the banks and everybody else actually supports the informal sector to actually grow, to create the kind of employment that we are looking for. One of the key areas that we've seen also in the research and in the data is that people are actually staying in the informal sector much longer than they used to. Whereas before, people used to come in for 2 years, people actually are in the informal sector as own account workers or as small businesses or enterprises for over 10 years. So that tells us actually there's something here that's happening. And that's growing. And that's something that we have to actually think about in terms of thinking about the support of these organizations. We're not supporting fly-by-nights because many people think, I can't give you something because of Fikanje Namhlanje, and then you'll stay for 3 months or 6 months once Manum. Well, some of us have done that, but certainly not everyone. And that's something that's important when we think about supporting these things. But one of the studies that have come recently is the Harvard, or what they call growth lab studies. And they emphasize that in South Africa, small and medium enterprises are much less seen, or in the informal sector, much less seen than the rest of the continent, and certainly much of the peer countries, such as Mexico and other countries that are seen as emerging countries. And that's because of our spatial planning. So an important area that we're going to have to focus on in the support of this is spatial planning, because everybody, the way we build is, people are staying far from urban centers, far from economic centers, is to see how we actually, as we build, we are creating the space for the informal sector and SMMEs or MSMEs to actually thrive. And that's going to be important in the planning of housing, in the planning of schools, in the planning of everything that we are doing together, that actually the formal sector can thrive and create the kind of employment that we do. So densification is going to be important. So in terms of what we think then about how we actually support these and to create these value chains, MEC, you said something that I thought was interesting earlier when you said that people criticize you because you are supporting the social sector. The social sector is quite critical in seeding the informal sector, because obviously you'll be very surprised. Many of the companies that are in the property sector in particular, they'll always ask you the question, how much do you think the grant is going to go up by this year? Because they actually put that in their planning, because the more the grant goes up, the more their properties, there's lots of traffic going in there. And it's the traffic that we need to create jobs. In one of these slides, we did some research here to show the importance of actually public spending and also business spending if we are trying to actually grow the economy and employment. That if we try just to put into employment, through the formal or the informal sector, 708,000 people. We have got 708,000 people now who are actually unemployed but have qualifications. And those people, if you put them in employment, you could create 48 billion rand immediately into the economy. And that's something that we need to be doing and create more jobs. And as you actually create more employment, as you actually invest in society, in communities, because once you pay one person money, they take that money, by Utenga, esirhoxweni apha uthenga for corona, nomnye and the next person starts to build their house. When they are extending their house with that money, they are actually, all of these people are actually connected, and that's how we're actually building value chains. We're not going to build them, we're sitting back and hoping. So there's an important part in government, actually their expenditure. And then we see the 17 billion that's being spent outside. We're going to find a way to bring it back into the Eastern Cape, because that's where it's going to create the value that is needed. When we talk about value chains, we're talking to how from the primary sector to grow into the secondary sector, to go into the tertiary sector, and create a value of creation. And that's something that we've been struggling with. But it really, really does start in seeding economies, local economies, to make sure that there is money that is circulating in local economies. Because if there's no money circulating in local economies, SMEs are not able to actually thrive there. They have to actually find ways to move out. So what is important is to try and find ways in which the public sector in particular, and then the private sector. We were speaking recently to one of the retailers, and we were saying to them, look, many of the people who shop there are the people from the informal sector. But if you were to support them with credit, so say the person who is with Tengsama Gwenya, there's a lady in Soweto, Tengsama Gwenya. She makes about 4,000 rand a week. Now, she's going to make that 4,000 rand a week unless she, say Macro, for example, gives her a little bit more flour for 30 days without payment. That because they see her every month, every week she goes in and she buys every week. But they don't see that business as credit worthy, so that they could say, actually, we can see you want to grow your business. So we are happy to give you flour to the higher extent, and you'll pay us in 30 days, or you'll pay us in 90 days, so that we are actually able to service, a breakfast by the government in a way that actually allows you to grow and employ more people. So what we really need to do is to try and think about creative ways and clearer ways that are already visible in front of us. Because that's what happens to bigger businesses, right? If we are a big business, we are able to get better credit terms to be able to grow better. And what we need to do is to really focus and convince the private sector to look much deeper into this. In Mexico, they've got a very, very, very good system that they've started, where one of the things that they do, because they keep their logbooks. They've taken those logbooks or those journals and they've put them into a system. And that system has actually created a new credit system that tells you, because they've been paying according to this manner. And that has created a new credit market and a new growth spurt that hasn't been seen before. Again, it's about how we're actually looking at the opportunities that already exist, at the systems that are already existing, and how we actually grow those systems. I think I'll keep it there for now to say, look, in order for us to grow this, we're going to have to look at the systems we've already got, the ways of people doing business, and actually support those. And every part of the sector, whether it's a business sector or it's public sector, has a particular role to play, because we have completely run out of time. Thank you very much.
And without even summarizing what he said, I would just like to get an indication of hands from the floor. Remember what we said, it's a solutions-driven discussion. We are wanting to get to a point where we've got a list of key things that we are wanting to do as a province, that we are wanting to drive. So we're not going to be focusing on the challenges. I think those were presented by all of the speakers here today. But what we're going to be talking about is what is the change that we're going to create. If I can then have hands from the floor. I have noted you, Mr. September. I've noted you, Mr. Mhlomi. There's a third hand on the side. Can I have someone with an extra mic, please? Got 3 hands. I've noted you, Sis Twai. That's 4. There's a hand on that side. That's number 5. And the lady in black is number 6. And we've got a number 7 at the back. I've got 7 people. I'm allowing you a minute and a half each at the most. If you can do under that, I may even give you an opportunity again to speak. If we can start then with the first speaker on this side. Can I have an additional mic or additional mics? One this side and another one that side, please. And if you can just introduce yourself and where you are directing the comment, because I think there were a number of topics that were addressed today.
Okay, thanks. Working. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Am I real audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
I want to make sure that I'm audible. My ethical stand is that because I'm a pedagogue by profession, so I want my audience to hear me properly. I'm Brian September from the Eastern Cape Business Council. Mine is just, I would go on and on for an hour or for a day, but I'll be very snappy. Firstly, to thank the MEC for the budget yesterday. And as much as the budget looks tiny, but I'm sure innovative people can do so much with so little. There's a lot that has been said, but just to echo the last speaker there, Mr. Pai, the economist. You know, I like all your presentations there from small business, EPSA, and the economist. And yes, MEC, indeed, I did watch that Tabane program last night. He started by really hitting hard another insurance business, then came to a small business. I hope that the small business department takes a heed to what was said there last night. You know, there is so much we can do as entrepreneurs, listening to what has been happening here. Low-hanging fruits. Please, government, we want to be part. MEC says it nicely that it's time, we like our leaders, but it's time that our leaders listen to what people, the grassroots, say. And please, entrepreneurs, let us not be ashamed. We must be very vocal. Our voice is supreme. And if we have got willing leaders, like what the MEC has alluded to, that they are prepared to listen to us, we all agree. This whole, I don't want to ask people here, those who are from business, to lift up their hands. I don't want to engage in that. But if we were productive enough and focused enough, the 3/4 of this hall should be attended by entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
And those grants, people take it, Mr. Pai, people take it for granted what those people who are selling the fat cakes, the effect they do to the economy. And how I wish that micro, before you become macro, it should be micro. And it is at the root that all starts. Yes, there's a lot that can be said. And we support, this notion of this bloated public service. It's neither here nor there. The only thing, I'm not a labor person, I'm not promoting, but we need to be serviced by you guys. But what is lacking is value for money. People do not appreciate your services. You must be of help to the people, especially the people, the entrepreneurs. There is nothing that will extricate this country from the scourge or the pandemic of joblessness than the creation of entrepreneurship. And it is you, the partnership, which is very pertinent. The partnership, the private-public partnership, is something that is going to
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please, if I can ask everyone to please just keep it to 2 minutes, and if we can get into your comment, because this is a panel discussion. It is a discussion that we may have. But I think the most important thing that you are raising, Dada, is around the role of the informal sector, and it's about the responsiveness of government. So I have noted those 2 points from you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, hello, everybody. Greetings first to the MEC, the Honorable MEC, the government staff that is here with us today, and the business community. The name of the person speaking is Frank Malekwa, representing the Eastern Cape Business Council. Because time is short, I would have had a number of issues that I would have wanted to raise from the budget speech, but I think the time limits us from that. But I want to find a way to try and marry that together with a comment or question that I want to ask the gentleman in front. Because based on discussions we've had with government before, you will note that we have identified many problems. I think not a lot of them, but in areas where there's cash outflow from the province. One of those being the supply chain, of which is something that is being addressed. I was happy to read of some of the positives from the budget speech. The other part, which is still a sore point for us, is the area of unspent funds. 467 million, for instance, is what was returned last year, which is a very sore point to us. But I think in these areas, we do not need to be all gloomy, but we need to also look at those as areas where we need to find solutions to those problems. And if we could sit and say, let us find as a province mechanisms of how to address these areas, because often we always say that we don't have enough funds for this, we cannot do this because we don't have funding for that. The same province will have 467 million rands being returned to Treasury. And I think if we can maybe start and focus in those areas, maybe we can really find solutions. So my question to ABSA, because I know that a lot of businesses, small businesses go to ABSA, many of them don't qualify for funding at ABSA. I know that you said a lot of things there, you talk about documentation, but putting documentation aside, the bottom line is that SMMEs don't qualify. Many are complaining about that. But I think putting aside the restrictions that ASA would have, because I know that ASA has shareholders as well, you have a criteria that you have to meet as well, and so on and so on. But let's say we put aside all of those restrictions, and we could have another area that we can look for funding, and we could ask ABSA to become a contributor. And then if I was to ask you a question based on the 467 that is leaving the province, and we were to say, let us find mechanisms as organized business, as corporate, as government, how do we address that? And then you as ABSA, based on the information that you have on the businesses that come through to you that do not qualify and the problems that you know, what would you play, what would you as a corporate, what contributions do you think that as ABSA you could have in such a mechanism to take the province forward? I think that's a question. I will leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a third hand over that side. Sendini Bulisele Nonke, I've greeted for all of you. You can just say all protocol observed.
Good morning, all protocol observed. My name is Busiswe Mkangala Peter. I'm a farmer, and I'm also a provincial chairperson of Women in Agriculture and Rural Development. My comment is to all the speakers that were here, including the MEC, because we are saying SMMEs are cutting across all sectors. But you'll find that as farmers, the most problem for farmers is markets. And we are told that there's a lot of money that is coming out of the province with agriculture as an industry that has to be employing people and increasing the economy of the province. Because even now, if you ate, thank the farmer. Even though in the morning we were greeted with too much sugar, sugary things, in the midst of the Eastern Cape having a problem with health and nutrition, stunting growth in children. But then my take is that, can we consolidate the markets for the farmers? Because we know a lot of money goes out from Department of Education, Health, Social Development, Correctional Services, and Defense, and that is food that is supposed to be procured from farmers. Even the venue that we are at, it's hospitality. And have you checked where are they sourcing their food from? Are the SMMEs or MSMEs in the Eastern Cape benefiting from the ICC's supply chain with food? And also because it is cutting across the sectors. Department of Agriculture had a good thing last year where they put in a call for aggregators for these departments that I've mentioned that deal with nutrition. but then that has come to a stop. We don't know what is happening. Can that please be consolidated? Because this is where the farmers will stop being emerging and become commercial and scale up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're noting that comment. There was was there another hand on this side? Okay, if we can move on then to the side. Oh, Connie Sandlin is possibly, oh, Sister, yes. Number 4, then I think there were 2 and 1 at the back. Okay,
thank you. Thank you very much, Program Director.
All protocol observed. I'm Kwaitazi Tuta. I'm representing NAFCOC, and I'm not alone here. I'm with NAFCOC members from all regions of the Eastern Cape. Can they wave hands? At NAFCOC, we lead members as Kokeli Zikozetu. I just want to make a comment, which is appreciating the budget speech that was done by the MEC yesterday. We have noted some increase in the budget, which is going to be an increase in job creation as well. And as MSMEs, we are happy about that. And what we are a little bit concerned is to ensure that what was presented is going to be implemented. I just want to check from the MEC, I'm a little bit concerned about the Economic Development Fund. The MEC mentioned that there are 6 programs which benefited from that fund, and the total was about 81 million, and there was money from it which has been rolled over to this current financial year. I'm echoing the same sentiments of my previous speaker, which is saying it is not right not to spend money and to roll it over. So we need to have a strategy. And also we are interested to know which programs are those that are benefiting, that are part of the Economic Development Fund. And for this current financial year, what is the budget for that fund? Is it still on? What is going on? And also I wanted to comment regarding the budget that the MEC said it has been spent for SMMEs. The total spent budget, he said, is 46.8, and out of that, 38 billion has been spent on SMMEs, and 21.7 has benefited them. It would be very good for us as SMMEs to have another follow-up session like this, even if it's in the form of a conference where these SMMEs that are benefiting are able to showcase, are able to talk about what they have been benefited, how they have been assisted. And I also want to refer to the speaker from APSA and also share the sentiments that we are really, they are our corporate partners, and they are supporting us as SMMEs, and they have been also to various regions in the province assisting us.
Thank you.
Isikalo Youth Fund, I want to commend the province again for that, because some of our youth have shown us that they have got appointment letters, regardless of when they applied, because they applied in 2021. But we are happy that finally they have been appointed. Lastly, to ECDC, I think our members are benefiting a lot to the programs that ECDC is implementing. You have your rural, your STREP funding and others. The women and youth enterprises are also benefiting, but there's still room for improvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's try a round of applause.
Good morning, Molweni. My name is Gino Dolfava. I represent the Buffalo City Maritime Cluster. And my question would come to the MEC. Thank you for the theme. And as your program director says, we are here to offer solutions. We don't want this just to be another talk show. I've been absent for 5 years, and I was hoping, Vukile, that I would an APSA bank, that I would have seen some SMMEs, as my colleague lady has just said, to showcase what are we really doing. They are not here to talk about the successes of that measly 81 million that my sister has just spoken about, spent on SMMEs. We could talk about from cleaning materials, low-hanging fruit. We haven't created, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we haven't created one successful black business that is manufacturing cleaning detergents, which is a huge budget within government and public sector. But let me not go there. Let me focus on my address to the MEC and this wonderful theme that he has come about, him and his team. From the Buffalo City Maritime Cluster, we assisted in raising funds from late Minister Edna Molewa in 2017 for the Oceans Economy Master Plan. Do you remember it, MEC Mvoko? I'm saying this document, we concluded this document with the Nelson Mandela University in putting this document. It's 5 years later. There hasn't been any implementation of some of our proposals that we put in developing successful businesses within the maritime space, marine tourism, small boat building. It's sectors that is dominated by whites. And it's 5 years. MEC, go look up in the Premier's office. Where is that document? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gino. And our final speaker at the back. Well, you didn't clap for Gino. Please, can we clap for Gino? You'll be the final one. I'll save the best for last, sir. It's the pillar that I think is blocking you. Okay, let's give at the back, and then there's a gentleman in front.
Okay, molweni. Igama lam ngumlungisi Sonwabile Bushula. I'm a CEO, mechanic, all-rounder kwi-company yam because I'm an SMME and andikwazi uzenza zonke ezi zinto ndiyi-one. I'm also representing Youth in Agriculture and Rural Development apha ephondweni nationally. I-opening remark yam izama nje ubonisa ba i-SMMEs ziface how many challenges because asina support systems ezis-enablishayo uba masibe effective kwi-sectors esiparticipate kuzo. And my comment basically cuts across to all the speakers that are on the panel. I want them to recognize and appreciate that our economy is not transformed, and also the means of production are heavily reliant on our counterparts who were previously advantaged. When you go to the bank, there are lots of red tapes. In market, iyafunwa, but the people you are competing with, ngaba bafuneka bekunike market. And abayithandi lento yokuba thina sisupportwa sibizwe BEEs ingathi siyasupportwa ngu-government, whereby it's not necessarily the case ngamaxesha amaninzi. Benifuna ucela kwi-leadership ba in all the programs that are being implemented, let's focus on quality over quantity. Because if we are going to spread like slice a cake, let's say it's the size of this table, and gabanda by 100, not everyone will be sufficient and be able to share to the others. But the method that can be implemented could be empowering the companies that have shown like but they can withstand the sector, and then with what they are supported with, they've got an obligation to support abanye abalandelayo. Then we sectors as dibene ne manufacturing, where they are heavily reliant on labor, there's an issue of dependency that has been created by the government, like in the form of social grants, that causes us to battle to get quality labor, because abantu bafumana imali bengasebenzi, and then bangafuni uyophangela, and then there are high levels of absenteeism nezinto ezibangela ba production levels zingareachwa ngexesha. There are so many more, but ke sawuphinda sijonge enye round.
From late Minister Edna Molewa in 2017 for the Oceans Economy Master Plan. Do you remember it, MEC Mvoko? I'm saying this document, we concluded this document with the Nelson Mandela University in putting this document. It's 5 years later. there hasn't been any implementation of some of our proposals that we put in developing successful businesses within the maritime space, marine tourism, small boat building. It's sectors that is dominated by whites. And it's 5 years, MUC, go look up in the Premier's office, where is that document? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gino. And our final speaker at the back. Well, you didn't clap for Gino. Please, can we clap for Gino? You'll be the final one. I'll save the best for last, sir. It's the pillar that I think is blocking you. Okay, let's give at the back, and then there's a gentleman in front.
Okay, molweni. Igama lam ngumlungisi Sonwabile Bushula. I'm a CEO, mechanic, all-rounder kwi-company yam because I'm an SMME and andikwazi uzenza zonke ezi zinto ndiyi-one. I'm also representing Youth in Agriculture and Rural Development apha ephondweni nationally. I-opening remark yam izama nje ubonisa ba i-SMMEs ziface how many challenges because asina support systems ezis-enablishayo uba masibe effective kwi-sectors esiparticipate kuzo. And my comment basically cuts across to all the speakers that are on the panel. I want them to recognize and appreciate that our economy is not transformed, and also the means of production are heavily reliant on our counterparts who were previously advantaged. When you go to the bank, there are lots of red tapes. In market, iyafunwa, but the people you are competing with, ngaba bafuneka bekunike market, and abayithandi lento yokuba thina sisupportwa sibizwe BEEs ingathi siyasupportwa ngu-government, whereby it's not necessarily the case ngamaxesha amaninzi. Benifuna ucela kwi-leadership ba in all the programs that are being implemented, let's focus on quality over quantity. Because if we are going to spread like slice a cake, let's say it's the size of this table, and ngabanda by 100, not everyone will be sufficient and be able to share to the others. But the method that can be implemented could be empowering the companies that have shown like Indo-Yokba, they can withstand the sector. And then with what they are supported with, they've got an obligation to support abanye abalandelayo. Then we sectors as dependent in manufacturing, where they are heavily reliant on labor, there's an issue of dependency that has been created by the government, like in the form of social grants, that causes us to battle to get quality labor, because abantu bafumana imali bengasebenzi, and then bangafuni uyophangela, and then there are high levels of absenteeism nezinto ezibangela aba production levels zingareachwa ngexesha. There are so many more, but ke sawuphinda sijonge enye round.
Thank you very much. Our last a round of applause for Mr. Bushula. There's a hand here in front. I had taken 7 hands. I had noted 7 hands. Bavele pabanya ba extra. Okay, okay. Can we give 1 minute to each? I am respecting your time as business people as well. And I would like some quality input from the speakers as well. Just 1 minute each, please. Thank you, sir.
1 minute. Program Director, good morning. All protocol observed. I've got few things from the panel that have spoken. My name is Nkosinati Sikobi, representing the Tangen Village Business Forum. I want to ask, request the MEC to consider the departments under government when it comes to procurement of services. SMMEs should be, because the 30% that has been allocated for SMMEs, it's not working. We see money from the province going to other provinces, whereas there are businesses that are locally, and then they can do the job, but most of the bulk of the money goes to other provinces because, especially major infrastructure projects, it's companies that are coming outside of the provinces that benefit, and then they give 30%, that is meaningless to the locals. That 30%, most of the time you find that those big companies, what they do, they give us the portion of the BOQ that they know they're not going to make money. So sometimes what it happens is that it means those SMMEs that they've got that work, they won't even be able to finish that job because materials, they keep going up because they knew that they know the bulk, that portion, it's not going to make any profits. And then you talk about, there's a new term now that is called the construction in mafia or mafia in construction. That thing, it happens because locals, they are not considered. So they're forcing their way to make sure that they benefit on projects that are happening in their areas. Because remember, projects are happening in wards. So if there's work in your ward and you're not considered, whereas you do that kind of job, but work is done by somebody else that is coming from another province, then it becomes a problem. Because if you talk about local economic development and you talk about the Eastern Cape, that is one of the poorest provinces, and yet the bulk of the money of the projects that is supposed to benefit the locals, it goes outside of the province. What are we doing? Lastly, just not to waste your time, I noted ABSA and their programs. In recent weeks, we've read news about the banks, the way they treat black people. It's interesting that you come in this platform and then you tell us all these fancy things that you, but we know nothing about the programs that you're bringing. I wish this is not one of those talk shows where we will see you now next year, same time, where it's just a platform to finish the budget since it's March now. I thank you.
Thank you. If I can ask the lady to please come in, also a minute.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning to the leadership. My name is Wiseka Mboxela. I'm coming from a village in Aidukyo called Guadane, and my speaking here will be representing the small and maybe the lonely voices that are coming from there. The first thing that which I would wish to agree with the MEC is that the non-payment of service providers most of the time is something that is done with two interests that are silent, that you didn't really get and see them or hear them in presentations of government. The first one is that you've got people that really don't have an interest of seeing other people grow. That's the reality. The second one is that you have people that are expecting some freebies in order for them to perform the duties that which they're employed for. And that's the reality. You won't get any presentation, but that's what is happening. Our younger brothers, they're subjected to that, and our younger sisters are subjected to that. The other point, Honorable MEC, which I would agree with you, when raising it, premising from JJ Tabane's show, is that we've got a plethora of funding institutions in the country, and all of them have got standards and structural dichotomy which must be followed in order for a particular document to meet and be finally funded. And I can tell you, most of the time, what our people do is to compare them and see which one has got a bit mild requirement. But what is there is that there is a very stagnant written agreed policy on how one must be funded. For an example, you find that if you go to CIFA, you go to CIDA, you go to that, a person will just put all of them in one place and say which one has got a short process. But at the end of the day, there is a rate tape that is written as a policy. So when you talk of a policy shift, it must not be a policy shift from mild to lemon and herb. It must be a policy shift that move from mild to hot and reflect strategically the sufferings that our own people are subjected to. I agree with you, a one-stop shop is needed so that you don't get to put a proposal here and put it there and put it there, because anyway, it becomes no difference. job-seeking process. The last other issue that which I would make to people that are in agriculture, I'm in a particular department that in terms of budget outlook in the province is given the bigger share. And I've never seen, for the past 5 years, I've never seen a scenario where they say to that honorable leader, honorable so-and-so, can we have a meeting with you and understand that if you've got schools in the province that take 2 billion for nutrition, how is this finding an expression in us as communities? Because Mahliwane Junior Secondary School is in a particular village, and that village has got a garden, and those gardens should be able to provide food for their own kids that are at the school. But you have SMME in agriculture coordinated in that manner, such that they are able to put pressure on government. Lastly, Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Please.
Okay.
We must also afford an
thank you very
opportunity
much.
for the
Thank you very
speakers
much.
to present. Over to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Enkosi mhlali ngaphambili. Ndicela ke ndiyithethe isiXhosa. Wathi umama sengqamakwe mhla sasigqibela uba lapha. Wathi nisike nikhumshe. Umhlaba nizovana ngoba nikhumsha kakhulu. Ndinewari ke sihlala ixesha lakho lincinci. But maniqale pha ku MEC. Siyabulela kakhulu ngebudget. Siyabulela noyiva into kokuba ikhona imali ejikweyo MEC. Maniqale ndizichaze nguPatrick Sunis. I'm a manufacturer. I'm from the SMME. Also the chairperson of What 15 Business Forum. Ibuhlungu kakhulu MEC into esivayo xa kuthiwa kukho imali ezijikayo. Ngoba kasifika kwezi ndawo kuthiwa akho mali. Kodwa ke kuqala maniqale ndikuqhabele wena izandla i-approach yakho ndikumamele kusasa pha. Kambe ezinye izinto andizozinyathela because sowuzithethile. Kandirawundisha uthi masibe nendlela yokwenza. Yabona ke ngoku besisezilalini okanye ezilokishini siqala lenqwelo MEC besikwazi uba responsible and sibe reliable kwi-community zethu. Because into ibisenzeka besithi kasihleli so okanye sihlele holweni elalini sibe nombuzo othi kakuvalwa i-meeting. I-next meeting yethu inini apho sizawuva iziphumo zale meeting. Sifike kula next meeting sithi matters arising from previous minutes. Ibisinceda nge-MEC lado because abantu beba i-accountability ibiba strong kakhulu. Sine problem program director kudala sihamba apha inoba for the ndifike 2014 from Northwest dabuyela kule province. But oko sihamba seminars MEC abanye abantu abasezi nobu yabona ku-empty apha because oko sipromiswa. I think the main problem is implementation. Because siza kubetha MEC xa soyithethile uthi ipolicy kugqityiwe ngazo it's almost 30 years. But si-implementa njani MEC and HODs? Mna naso ke isiphakamiso esithi program director. Fanele ba sibanayo i-follow-up session njengoba sesilo setshilo pha usisichwayi. Sike sithi kasiphuma apha sithi sawuphinda sibuyele kwelo holo. Mhlambi quarterly okanye after 6 months because apha kuthethwa nge-local producers. Uba unoya pha ezikolweni MEC zingaphi ndiku-manufacturing ye-cleaning detergents. Zingaphi i-cleaning detergents ezipha ezikolweni ngoku ezimanufacturishwa ngabantu abamnyama. Kasiyayo esitrongweni okanye emapoliseni zingaphi i-uniform ezikhoyo pha ezimanufacturishwa ngoomama basezilalini bakhona bayathunga. Kasezikolweni i-product ezityiwa pha setshila umama phaya. Eza veg zithengwa phi? Azithengwa kubo, zithengwa apha etown. So i-problem ingathi MEC i-follow up. If sinoke sibe ne-follow up lastly wayenentloni elapha uminister apha esithiyo ngokuthuphe nentloni because phaa kwakubizwe abantu abayoncedwa. If awunobona phaa it's a disaster kugcwele iifrijanyana ezincinci wathi wabuza uba hayibo ezi khampani zonke zidinga ezi friji nezi gas stove. Inoba ke namahlathi xa sisenza izinto zoburhulumente ayasibetha. Enkosi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A round of applause for him. I'd like to appreciate all of the input from the speakers, from the floor, and unfortunately we're not going to have an opportunity to take another round. MEC, I'd like to ask you to also be part of the responses. And I think most of what came through here were comments. I think the one aspect that's coming through, which MEC I think becomes something that you need to respond to, is there is definitely a need for a discussion between business and government. Because what we are now doing is the unresolved issues between business and government are now taking precedence in what should be a discussion around solutions for unlocking opportunities. So I think that's a fundamental one maybe that you need to comment on. And linked to that, maybe talk about what is government doing in building an accountable state. I think that's what Ms. Mvoko was talking about, saying in all these presentations, we don't talk about the reality of corruption, the reality of kickbacks, the reality of things that are being set aside for people. So that's definitely what that we need to talk to. And I think from you, sir, from a government perspective, you can see that there are stakeholders in the room. But from the speakers and from what has been said, I'd like you to touch on how do we move from stakeholders and partnerships to creating an ecosystem. An ecosystem that will start saying, what are the opportunities that exist for us to retain the funding that comes from government within the local value chains? How do we build that ecosystem? An ecosystem where there is a continuous dialogue between government, private sector, education, the schools, to ensure that everything, that there's a clear and there's a shared mandate on how we can drive and unlock opportunities. Maybe if you can talk to that. From a funding perspective, I think there's definitely a discussion around how you've got funding from government and how sometimes it's all just going from pillar to post and trying to make the most of what's easily available, and how you've got funding from private sector. And for you, sir, I would like you, as you do your comments as well, to also talk to, we speak about integration, we speak about information systems. How do we create a portal, a shared portal within private and public sector, where it's very clear what each funder does, where I don't need to move from Kanduli to come and submit documents, but I can submit my documents online. And when I submit them online, based on the type of opportunity that exists, it already applies to the relevant funding opportunities. And how do we then unlock the support of APSA, or even all of the banks, from a corporate citizenship perspective, to introduce systems within government that can help streamline that access to finance? But also, how do we then say, beyond than just funding, how do we centralize some of the support that is there, that you've spoken about, that is non-funding? You spoke about the potential of the informal sector. And the reality, and I think the lady that spoke about farming was also talking to how, yes, there are all these opportunities, there are all these markets, but how do we as government support the informal sector to access opportunities? From getting them registered, from getting them professionalized, from getting them commercialized, to a point where we will not have an ICC that will say there is a superficial blockage for them accessing those opportunities. That's what I've heard from comments in trying to consolidate everything that is here. And I think the rest, in terms of the performance of government and the relationship between government and private sector, really depends on that private engagement system that you spoke about. Thank you, by the way, for all of the comments and all of the acknowledgement of what government and government departments have done well. MEC, if I can ask you then to come and join us, and I will give then 3 to 4 minutes to each speaker. Thank you. Your final reflections.
Thank you, Sis Ayanda. And thank you again to the colleagues, I would say the ecosystem also here for the opportunity and inputs. There are some really that were also not raised, and the chair will take, you know, when from Gauteng Gangsters Paradise, you hijack the platform. There is this element about the Eastern Cape cannabis industry. I think that investment is needed here, Chairman, on a serious note, because the cannabis master plan is saying rural enterprises especially. So ECRDA, we've got an MOU with them, and with CEDA, there is a component around the cannabis cluster development. If we can really strengthen from the primary to the secondary component, I just said, let me highlight that. And also, Chairperson, key to what my colleagues from APSA here, it got me worried because we're also a panel, so it needs to engage a little. Because it is perpetuating the very mindset that cooperative are social activities. You register cooperatives at CIPC, you know, not as social development. So if the mindset of the bank is seeing cooperatives as only social components, it is almost a tragedy too. The very same APSA itself as an amalgamated bank come from the corporations itself. So it should have it in its mindset to support them. I think that really cannot be left unattended to. In other words, like the general science we did at school, Newton would say, a body will stay in its constant state unless acted upon by an external and imbalanced force. So if you don't shire this thing a little bit, it will stay like that. Chair, to your question in terms of the summary, in essence, indeed, this very same strategic framework for small enterprise, the next, that is the 10-year component, is addressing that very component around the ecosystem. The previous strategies were just like intervention, but this element of the ecosystem, the coordination of all the parties, government to government, that is horizontal. You find interdepartmentally, there's not even a relationship. Interspherical, national, provincial, as I was saying, you've got a country national, a country province, a country local. That is a major, major challenge that this, therefore, is saying is being attended to. Again, the ecosystem, to my, should I use the word openings and so on, some people might not even qualify to call themselves chiefs because the main chief said it, and I'm repeating it, the ears of the leader rings the voices of those they lead. So where do you get your mandate and then you create your APPs and so on? So to the business forums that are here, it's a plethora of them. Who is the real voice? You'll hear, hey, my last job before government was NAFCOC, by the way, and I did get him Khabulo there. So viva to that. But now, if you've got a business forum here, a business chamber there, a business council there, really now, who do I talk to and say this is the real voice? So the business cooperation, because we're also not self-serving, please, amongst yourself as well, try to find the cooperation amongst themselves. So the TDM, in my closer, Chairperson, should not be this thing called fashion, come and go, you know. TDM really, like in Son, and the President put it very clearly, it is the policy of government. So currently, some of our municipalities, this thing, we've got our own spluma, the way we do things. The province, at what stage does because we've got different financial years, especially at the municipal level, it starts in July. Their planning, how does it fit to the provincial planning? How does the provincial planning, which unfortunately concurrently runs with the national one, also fits to the national one? So that one is a structural issue you raised as a challenge that needs to be attended to. But we love you, colleagues. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chairperson. One of the key things, and I think the MEC referred to this, and it's really, really important, is that we need to build systems that are fit for purpose. You know, we were talking about portal. Whenever, you know, you log in to try and put in an application, the questions that are being asked have to be clear that actually this question leads us to this particular answer. What is the question we are trying to answer? And it's not really clear what questions we are trying to answer with all of the documents. Because if you could actually sit in a document and you look at it and you actually fill it in online, and it automatically prints out the information that's needed by the creditor or by the supportive institutions around what they're trying to do. What happens for the most times in these systems is that, they look at one that has been done by somebody else, and then they sort of repeat it. So if you need a VAT number, why do you actually need a VAT number? What purpose is the VAT number actually serving? So these are the kinds of things that are important, because then if we had a system that actually answered, because banks should all be answering the same questions, supportive institutions should be answering the same questions around what it is that we're trying to do. But perhaps one of the most important things, what we hear all the time, I've been attending these many times, is what are the opportunities? And this question is a difficult one, because entrepreneurs, or at least would-be entrepreneurs, are looking to see, where can I fit in myself? And that answers a different question. That answers a question around people sitting at home, perhaps looking for an opportunity. That opportunity may be unemployment, or that actually I'm trying to make some money. And that makes it difficult for government to say, look, come to us, and we have opportunities, for example, for you to service a particular need of government. But of course, if you don't have that kind of experience, it makes it also difficult. So we are facing some really serious problems around this idea of where the opportunities, and that really speaks to some of the formations are trying to sort of consolidate these opportunities. What's going to be important is probably this idea of the people then attending these capacity organizations and then saying, what actually are the kinds of programs that actually lead directly to people being able to take advantage of opportunities, because there is that delinking that we've seen a lot around. People get capacity building, but that capacity building is not fit to actually get the opportunities that they need, because you still need, in the questions, have you been doing this work for 3 years? What is it in the 3 years that's necessary? So those are the kinds of things that I think are important, having heard from here, that actually it's all about what questions are we trying to answer. And then when we do that, we can fill in the forms that actually answer exactly that, and then create fit-for-purpose kind of training or capacity building things that lead to the opportunities. And that's going to require some serious thinking there to be done. And I think it should be that part of the agenda that we're talking about.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Bendingethanda usa umqolo wami ngako MEC. Beke wathi izolo ngathi uphelelwa litorho ngoku. Andifuna uba negalelo kulonto ngomqolo wami onamathamsanqa. So thanks, Program Director. I think the portal that you are referring to, in ABSA, the portal that we have currently, I'm not saying it cannot be reconfigured to suit what business would want to see, but we've got a procurement portal where where she would easily go and access the markets that she was talking about in that portal and be a player in the markets, because in that procurement portal, you get to see what business opportunities are there nationwide, not just in the Eastern Cape. You can be able to be a national player through that portal. That's what we currently have. Then if you look at how then do we get to bridge the gap between private sector and business, I'm trying to capture that comment that was talking about how banks deal with black business. We've got corporate clients. I'll refer to a year that Utamzi would know, where at some point we had a partnership with Pick and Pay, where we would say, procure from local suppliers. And we would assist them via a fund. We would run a fund where SMMEs cannot afford to purchase or to run their factory to produce and supply. ABSA says, okay, we will run that process, assist you in terms of your production, and until it gets to the shops. Then we take what's ours and we give you what's yours. That program is still there, but much as now it gets to be tailor-made to the type of industry you're in, because some of the industries became high risk after COVID. Because some of these things were pre-COVID, and post-COVID, business has become sensitive. So we assist in that regard. I want to address that question. How do we then, if you as business council, NAFCOC, whichever business fraternity, if you get together and engage government and say, we want you to assist us to tap into what banks can do for us. And the banks, through Uzkala and Mbongo, Nosis Mandisa, they are very active, Nonozulu, Mr. Mpumzap, in signing MOUs with government. So when there's an MOU, they can say, okay, you want us to assist those SMMEs, but now let's sign something so that when we go there, we can be able to say, this is your side of the engagement that we need you to play in this part so that we can be able to assist that community. Because we understand very well that most SMMEs do not afford. And the red tape is very serious. That's why we've got other programs that circumvent the red tape issue. And in closing, most small businesses, when we want to go and see their concept and business at where they operate, they always run away from that. And I want to encourage you now, allow, let me not say banks now, I'm going to be general, allow ABSA to come into your premises, and when we know your business better, we are able to tailor-make solutions to that business. I will make an example, and I hope I'm not going to offend the business person. They don't like being spoken about. Maybe it might be free marketing. There's a Zazi clothing on the other side of East London. Zazi is an SMME. She's a fashion designer, traditional thing, imibhaco. When we got to understand her business and the concept thereof, we were able to tailor-make solutions where she wanted to have her own equipment and a factory and everything, to tailor-make solutions to talk to that business. We did not only look at the part of going to New York Fashion Week and all of those things, but rather, that's part of her marketing, but rather to tailor-make solutions to suit that business. It can be done, not only on the basis of affordability, on the basis of you being able to qualify. The red tape is there, we can't run away from it. It's there from the government, development finance institutions, it's there in the banks, but we are able to work through it if we get close as business. So I support that thing. Let's make the forum smaller so that we can engage, especially specific industries, and not talk general. I can't be looking at solutions for farmers and at the same time look at solutions for automotive in the same room. So we need to break it down so that we can take each one as its challenges can be solved. Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayand. I came here because you asked me to. Besi assign to do my job. So out of respect, I decided so I'm going to try and avoid responding to everything. So I'm sharing the time. Let me start talking about the formation of the business chambers. Someone spoke about the business chambers here. Who do I talk to? When I got to the department, there was already a proposal by the now Premier, who was MEC for a year in this department, of a formation of a business council that's going to look into all, that was going to represent all businesses. So I just got to the department, fortunately, years ago. I got into the department because he was only there for 6 months, and I continued with that. To an extent of calling them here. I think met here, listened to all of them, went through the concept document, and that's how the Eastern Cape Business Council was formed. the objective was to make sure that all of these smaller business chambers, in fact, all business chambers in the province would belong to the Business Council. So I just want to, I'm not going to talk about the dynamics in that, but the truth of the matter, that Business Council is a product of this government, so that we don't talk to FABCOS, talk to this one tomorrow. We talk to that Business Council. Maybe we should get closer to them. But the second point I'm going to run is that the system of funding is a serious challenge, both in public and the private sector. Dinendo paya endimandi ithetha paya ndiyazi basozivunywe ndawahamba ingavunywanga. This thing of free money is a challenge. Lendo ye free money is a challenge. Because wonke umuntu uleqa le free money. Basinonixela ingxaki esidiwa nazo kule free money. You'll be shocked. When someone applies, omiki bamnike Eldred imiliyoni ezivakalayo. A year down the line, they go there, akusekho nalo factory. I can make living examples, but I'm not going to mention them. Umuntu gets that 2 million rand, I establish into bemuntu, ayovumbuluka eBay, sefuna enye imali yenye into. Serious. It's because it's free money. If we could attach some portion, you will be responsible. Because a grant is 5 million, no 2 million, freely. We are going to have this child. And they ask, as fun about ye free money. But also, the private sector is not assisting us. I think we are in competition when it comes to funding. In Mamelo Absa City, lende collateral, abana ngaki, kuinda ba isebenzisayo. I'm very interested to hear. Baba sebenza ntoni? Noba uzonhlebela. Because this is the essence of it when it comes to the MSMEs. They will never grow. They have nothing to put on the table. And for imizekelo ke yenye big companies thatha abantu bethu bekhona franchise. Zininzi ke ngoku down the line, many of them are collapsing and dying because people can't survive the conditions of the franchise itself. Without mentioning the campaign, but I know of two big, two of the big companies that have got a franchise, that started franchises, in most Abantu are not able to sustain it without really mentioning it. The procurement regime is also a challenge. Bithethwa nguvuyiseka pha xa akuya refuse because wayanda ubize mna wathi yaphendula nguwe. Isika macala. It's a double-edged sword. Firstly, for a long time it was a struggle for a government to procure from these small ones, from the MSMEs, for SVEGs and all of those things, to schools and hospitals. And these guys from Treasury went overboard and tried and created that environment. Guess what? Siyenzile singu Treasury. I-department maziyenze, i-department aziyipa afuni. Siyenzile thina. We've created that platform that xa upha engqamakwe jwarha kukho isikolo phaya esifuna ufidwa, but u-Department of Education, I mean, yesasikolo masithenga apha local. But also if ukho isibhedlele, i-procurement yenziwa apha ephondweni. I-procurement mayochekishwa phaya engqamakwe ba yintoni ekhoyo phaya enoncedisa abantu bethengwe pha. Hayi ayenzeki nangoku. Ithe sathengwe eDurban naseGauteng in big bucks. This is the challenge we have. So the mindset now within our own officials is not changing. This is the challenge we have. Fortunately, we've reported this in EXCO to say, Premier, siyenzile. Hayi abavumi. That's why because our figures, the MSMEs, benbala is 17 point something billion that went kaphandle. And fully declare like this is abangavuma abanye kodwa niyazazi. On the, let me fold it, two more, sorry, Ayanda. On the ECDF, How I ndizawuthetha makathethe ngala ECDF. Where question is imali, it was 100 million, we've added the 30 million, now it's 130 million. Makathethe ngayo ke wakutheni kukhumala ijikisileyo kutheni ningafumananga nina abafunayo ayizongenzongena kuyo ke le. I disagree nalento ye-construction mafia ukuthi yenziwa indoba we are not sticking to policy. I completely disagree with it. A-construction mafia is criminal. It is criminal. And in the most instances, abantu be-construction mafia do not even want to work. They want to go there and demand their 30%, but with 30%, basuke ecaleni bashiya abantu would really deserve to get that money. So I don't want us to defend land construction mafia. It's a criminal activity by people who have their own interest. And it is stifling development. Sibonile natapa kuti bikale pa Alfredo. Sibonile how it has stifled development. So I completely disagree with that. It's a criminal element. And lastly, yabona ke thina mos sizi politicians. This thing about promises and implementation. We organized this business breakfast so that we could listen to you guys talking to us, government. How do we improve? How do we do things differently and improve? It was not intended to be a seminar. It was intended by Safikapa, Simamele, Kunya City. Thank you very much. So that the next administration will take into cognizance what you raised here today. Siyaqeda most nazi politicians siyadlula asiphelelanga apha. Ngiyazi ndike ndibabona abantu umuntu akufonele MEC ndicela mani undincede kulanto sifakile kulanto kanye MEC sine concept. They leave these officials that are actually going to decide on the matter. Even akulento ye tenders bendimamele ebithethwa ngayo angendawo mina ndifuna uyadrongweni soze ndingene noba ungathi mandikuncedise ndizawuvuma ndiyithumele phaa kumajeke ndakudicela ndiya phaa kumajeke soze undibone. Fortunately nabo HOD bamobili andicinga undibone kulaa nto andizoza nee-proposals zenu ze-procurement ndiyozenza phaya ndibanjwe ndedwa nihlale nifumana komnye umntu elandelayo. So it was intended for us to listen in order for the next administration to do something about it. So it's not really that there isn't going to be any follow-up. I don't want to say all other things.
Thank you very much. Masimnike a round of applause to MEC. I'm going to ask on HOD Majeke to come and just thank our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Program Director. Just a quick one, just token of appreciation. Don't worry what is inside into it. Just a token. Could be anything else, but just to appreciate, I think, you investing in time in preparation for this and, of course, what your valuable inputs. So without saying much, you'll see. Thank you. And then to the program director, I know everyone else is going to be thanked by CEO. Yes, welcome. But you see, it's just unique. She's a lady. so we decided to say, let it be unique, different to her thing. And it's all match the outfit, you see? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, these are my last comments. I think there was a question, there was a problem statement we had. And I think there are 4 answers to the problem statement we had. What is it? What are the areas of collaboration to drive the development of MSMEs? I think the first one is access to markets and opportunities. And it's something that needs to be championed by government. Because I think from the discussion that we've had here, it's not just about access to any opportunities and markets, but it's about being able to leverage off the government spend. That's the first one. The second one is around reducing the red tape and streamlining access to some of the support services that are there. And I think, Mr. Wakaba, as I said here, I thought that maybe that could be something that ECDC could collaborate even with private sector on, in terms of being able to expand the role of the one-stop shop to support some of these MSMEs. The third aspect is around funding. And I think when we talk about funding, we're not just talking about the formal funding, but we're also talking about funding opportunities for the informal sector. And I think the appeal as well on funding is that as bankers, stretch yourself beyond what are your existing sectors. Look at new sectors of development so that you can support some of the upcoming institutions. And I think for me, the last one is attitude, collaboration, holding hands between government, between private sector, between all of the stakeholders that are in the room. Because if we do not create that ecosystem, we are not going to be driving towards the same point. I just wanted to make those as the 4 areas of collaboration that are the outcome of this discussion. Who drives them? It's a provincial treasury directive. They will need to then say, how do we take that forward? That is my tender ending right now, and I would then like to officially hand you over to Mr. Ayanda Wakaba to do the closing remarks on behalf of provincial government. Thank you.
Program Director, thank you very much. And again, thank you to the speakers as well. I would like to start by saying protocol observed. Mine is short, is to make observations about the take-ins that we as provincial government will be taking as homework, but also to outline what we see as a way forward from these engagements. It's clear, MEC, that we need more of these, and we will capture that as we outline what is it that we're taking home. We've jotted about 8 points that we believe as we take these engagements forward. One is just the issue of the need for efficacy in resource allocation and utilization. I think we all know the public fiscus is shrinking and that we need to find better means to utilize resources. Resources are simply in short supply, and we can no longer push for more money because there is simply no more money. I hope that message is settling so that we begin to look at innovative ways of utilizing what we have. Is Zamge the audio. The other is just the need to, should I say, make informed bets as the public sector leadership. With the resources in short supply, I think it is necessary that we make these hard decisions about what is it that we will do and what is it that we will not do. There's an opportunity cost for spend. Whatever you do, occupies a space in time and in resources of something else that you could have done. I think this exercise is generally very difficult for the public sector with the ever-increasing demands from communities. When there's a report that kuphela mayeza esibhedlele or kids have not been transported, I think those generally trip government in this exercise. But I think the message coming from the floor is that we need to continue seeing how we can do better in this matter of taking bets and deciding what is it that will give us better dividends than other things. Then the third aspect is the need for improving public-private sector relationships. I've always believed that this is a gold mine, that if we were to invest time and resources in these engagements, we would do better, not just as government, but as a nation. I think there are many opportunities where we can attain a better outcome in programs, especially if we start doing these at program design level as government. So when we introduce all of these interventions, which we often do as government, if we make it a culture to sit with the private sector and say, what are your thoughts? How can we collaborate to take these initiatives forward? The fourth, kule ngxowa yethu yomphako, is the need for continuous improvement in the instruments that we use as government, such that we systematically grow SMMEs. Kude kube nzima nokhomba abo bancedileyo over a period of time, because uyicakace kakhulu le cake until it became meaningless. So this notion about us formulating instruments that can take businesses, business operators from one level of operations to the other level, I think that is also taking traction. Siyayivalo message leyo. The next, possible the fifth, is just the appreciation of the work done by national government. The NISED, the national, small, national small enterprise bill, as well as other policy interventions that national government is putting in this space, I think are well received. The extent to which we as the province interface with those processes to make sure that we prepare ourselves to benefit from those initiatives. The sixth, which is very close to my heart, is this issue of introducing digital technologies to do what I would call Uberizing value chains, particularly in the agri industry. I think we all observe how the Uber concept changed the world, where you have a company which owns no cars but involved in cars through utilization of technology. The concept of how we could take that very same concept and introduce it in SMME operating environment, such that ukuba unobisi usencocha and you are a single operator, okanye unoboya uselady fre, you are at lady fre, you're able to interface with should I say, the actual wool manufacturer instead of a middleman, where we introduce systems where the manufacturer could have a line of sight as to who has what stock where. We went to Kenya recently, MEC, for a learning trip on this. It was ourselves and Dr. Da, and it was an eye-opener, an amazing experience when we saw SMMEs at the very grass first level tier of SMME participating in an economy in a meaningful way through technology, where the large producers and processors of milk were able to buy directly from these SMMEs through these rather very simple technology-driven systems. And we think we can do that in many aspects within our agri-industry and even other areas of trade. The other aspect raised, which we also including in our bag, is this notion that economic growth is no longer a simple proxy for job creation, that the economy may grow, but jobs may not grow, and that government and private sector alike need to be mindful about how we design programs, but more importantly, that in resource allocation and prioritization, we need to look at programs that intentionally advance job creation. It used to be the case, Mr. Pai, that if there's growth, job creation is assumed, and I think the point that you raise, that is no longer a straight line relationship, we've taken note of. The next point is about the need to integrate the formal and informal business sector, particularly in relation to structured arrangements to incorporate participation of SMMEs in value chains. I think the issue raised here, the example made about umama wenza amagwinya having to acquire all his inputs from the formal value chain, and about what arrangements would the formal value chain have in place to support la mama in a commercially sound sense. I think it's very important. It also points to the technological interventions, that with such interventions you could be able to have sight of information around the stocks that that lady needs in a given period, and about behavioral patterns of that lady, which then would enable an introduction of a meaningful commercial relationship between the formal and the informal sector. And we homework before I outline how we think we should take these things forward. I think the last part I want to raise is move to what we think we should do about feedback. We think MEC, and we would offer ourselves to do this, that we should have this session at least twice a year. The ECDC would only be glad to facilitate this on your behalf, where we could take stock of the journey that the Eastern Cape is traversing in the area of just the economy development in general, and in particular SMME support and empowerment. And we could, in those sessions, structure the programs such that there's feedback on what government is doing on these matters, and there's also feedback from organized business and private sector regarding to how can we do better and how can we partner. So we're keen to do that, MEC. We've also taken note of the need to sharpen the responsiveness of government in terms of its instruments to SMMEs. I think this notion of red tape, I think you made mention, MEC, of the piles that SMMEs have to provide, just the need for us as government to be sensitive and design instruments that are accessible to the level of SMMEs that we're supporting. We've done this. Thank you, Sistwai, for acknowledging that in the STREP, where it's possible to get a funding approval without a thick business plan. You are running a tire shop. All you need is a machine that can assist in lifting the cars. You've got a store, we can all see it. You've got books which indicate that you're trading. So your letter could be enough to secure funding, where we in fact send an official to your store to undertake an on-site assessment. Abuye engakufunanga financial statements, because here this is about a financial support. Isn't it? I will need the loan in this instance. Umchini 65,000 as an example. Enzi report eti uyibonile le business yako is operating, it's in order, in customers, all you need is this machine. Ningathi ke detail loans money akanjalo. We're talking about financial support. It's a different story when you're talking about a loan. Nonetheless, even in relation to loans, we've sharpened our products to make sure that asikufuni imbiba nebuzi when you apply for a loan, but we focus on what is necessary to undertake due intelligence, due risk assessment. Lastly, MEC, I must talk about the EDF. The EDF is a newly established fund by this province, and we call it an Economic Development Fund, a welcomed intervention by government to assist in stimulating the economy. The EDF finances initiatives that meet 3 criteria. 1, the initiative itself must have an element of resource leverage. 2, it must stimulate economic growth, either within a specific sector or industry value chain. And 3, it must be commercially sound. We always push that the deals that we would approve must have a very strong commercial sound undergirding them. Now, the applicants are state entities and government. The fund itself is not for the state entities and government. The fund itself is for partnerships with private sector. So you may have the AIDC needing to support operators in the automotive industry. So the AIDC becomes the applicant, but the beneficiary will be operators in the industry. You may have the ELIDZ wanting to establish a critical ICT infrastructure, and they have got a gap shortage in funding, but the beneficiary is the private sector towards stimulating an economic activity. So it's a very, very instrumental intervention by the province. It is in its first year of operation. It was allocated 100 million. It has spent 81 million. In fact, call it 92 million if you include management. Call it 89 million if you include management fees. It's left MEC with 11 million. I'm hesitant if it will be rolled over, MEC. Well, maybe the transfer of the money may be rolled over, but we already have a 50 million pipeline of applications for that 11 million. I would wish you would consider adjusting that 30 to another 100, but that's a discussion for a different day, colleagues. Well, in conclusion, I'm also asked to thank all of you for your participation. I think you've come out in numbers, the engagement were productive, and the speakers, MEC, abasi basiqwempile nje kodwa basonzakalisanga. And we appreciate as well, MEC, the notion that we should listen more from the sector, business, as well as the private sector. And thank you very, very much. We've now concluded this session. I want to believe we will start the eating session. Thank you very much.